Chapter 1457. Everyone. What kind of answer was that? They had seen arrogant people, but they had never seen such arrogant people. Yaobin couldn't help but chuckle with some disapproval. Trump card. Then I wonder what kind of trump card could allow a rank 8 warrior to defeat a demigod. Since ancient times, such things were very rare. This Chuyu. I really don't know what he was thinking, to actually give such an answer. Even if he had a trump card, in the case of an extremely tyrannical opponent, the weak wouldn't even have a chance to make a move. What's more winning? Chu Luyue crossed his arms and supported his chin with one hand, showing a troubled expression. Trump card. At that time, she had taken out Scarlet Heaven Sword and directly killed the other party. If she said it, everyone would definitely guess that it was a venerable artifact. At that time, it might cause some trouble again. But if she didn't say it, it was obvious that the situation in front of her was unsolvable. Chu Luyue's hesitant look, in the eyes of everyone, was undoubtedly guilty. What trump card? I think it's just an excuse he made up. That's right, a rank 8 warrior fighting a demigod. Isn't this courting death? It's already very difficult to escape alive, and he actually said that he won. He really doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. I think either the origin of this wooden token is wrong, or he used other methods. Actually, no one has seen those people from the Black Demon Cave. Who knows if they really started fighting or... All kinds of discussions drilled into their ears. Zhuosheng was anxious and couldn't help but shout. What we said just now is all true. When Chuyu came back that day, he was even injured. Being injured doesn't mean anything. Yaobin looked at Zhuosheng coldly, and the tyrannical pressure suddenly pressed down on Zhuosheng's chest, making him unable to speak. His face quickly flushed red. Yaobin! Elder Bo Yin suddenly shouted in a low voice. An invisible force flew out. Bang! A slight collision sound rang out. Zhuosheng immediately felt the pressure on his body dissipate. He was finally able to relax and gasp for breath. However, his heart was still beating crazily, and couldn't calm down for a long time. He knew that as long as the other party wanted to, he could take his life at any time. If not for Elder Bo Yan's help. Yaobin, don't go too far. Elder Bo Yan's face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost. The coldness was threatening. Zhuosheng was only standing here as a witness. What right did Yaobin have to make a move? The people of his Spirit Firmament Academy were watching right here. Yaobin also felt that he had lost his composure. He frowned, and his tone softened a lot. I just think he's a little noisy. After all, I asked Chuyu. This old man knows that Purple Light County and Black Demon Cave are like fire and water, so it is normal for Princess Yao to lose her composure. However, everyone was here today to solve the problem, not to create a problem. Princess Yao, please pay more attention in the future. Lingxiao College in Ziguang County did not have any grudges, and Yaobin was not a bad person. Since the other party had lowered his stance, Elder Bo Yin did not intend to be too aggressive. Just a little bit of vigilance was enough. Elder Bo Yin raised his chin at Luo Yinming and Zhuosheng. You two come back. The two of them looked at Chu Luyue. Chu Luyue knew that they were worried about her, and her heart warmed. Don't worry, I'm fine. Only then did the two of them retreat. Princess Yao. Chu Luyue looked at Yaobin. If we continue to argue, no matter how much we say, no one will believe us completely. Why don't we change the method and end this quickly? Yaobin frowned. What do you want to do? Chu Luyue's lips curled up slightly as she looked around. Everyone should be thinking the same thing as Princess Yao, that I'm just lying. Since that's the case, why don't we have a match? Those who have come here today are all famous experts of the Divine Ruins world. Why don't everyone choose a demigod expert to fight with me? Let's see if I, Chuyu, can win this match. After a short silence, the crowd was in an uproar. Did this Chuyu know what he was saying? Fighting a demigod expert in front of everyone. Wasn't he looking for trouble for himself? Chu Luyue had already expected their reaction, so she didn't care. She raised her chin slightly, and her smile deepened. In order to completely recreate the situation that day, I will also suppress my strength to the peak of the 8th stage. This way, after the battle, these people wouldn't have the chance to nitpick even if they wanted to. Yaobin looked at Chu Luyue in shock. Crazy. Really crazy. If Chu Yu fought with his current strength, perhaps he wouldn't lose so miserably. But he still wanted to suppress his strength to the 8th stage? He must be tired of living. Elder Bo Yin was a little anxious and wanted to object. However, before he could say anything, a low and pleasant voice suddenly sounded in his ear. Elder, let her do as she pleases. Elder Bo Yin turned his head in surprise. Rong Xiaoyu. Rong Xiao's thin lips curled up slightly, revealing an extremely faint smile. Since she dares to say so, she must be prepared. He knew her too well. She wasn't someone who liked to be taken advantage of. After being bullied to such an extent, how could she let it go just like that? Even if the other party wanted to stop now, she wouldn't agree. Hearing this, Elder Bo Yan's heart calmed down a little. After thinking about it again and again, he could only nod. Forget it. If Chu Yu really couldn't beat the other party, it wouldn't be too late for him to make a move then. After all, he was from Lingxiao College, and no one could bully him. Since Chu Luiyue took the initiative to say so, how could the others not agree? Yabin took a deep breath. Good. Bold. This kind of courage wasn't something an ordinary person could have. He just didn't know if this Chu Yu was a newborn calf that wasn't afraid of tigers, or did he really have a trump card? Chu Luiyue smiled lightly and nodded. Thank you for the compliment. Then, who do you want to invite? Everyone looked around. There were many exalted gods here, but not many demigods. A slightly hoarse voice suddenly sounded. I'll do it. Bailey Jun turned his head in surprise. Lil Luyu. Her body hadn't completely recovered yet. Jiang Jiwan's heart was very firm. There weren't many opportunities to kill Chu Yu in public like this. Chu Luiyue looked at the young man who stood out, and narrowed her eyes dangerously. After a moment she smiled brightly. Sure. You're welcome. Digression. Today's 4th update, tomorrow's 6th update. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1458. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Jiang Ziyuan, who had carefully disguised herself, with different expressions. From the outside, she looked like an ordinary young man in all aspects. And her aura was indeed that of a demigod. Originally, everyone was still a little hesitant about the candidate, but now that someone had stepped forward, they were relieved. Moreover, this person was brought here by Bailey Jun, so everyone had to give him some face. In some people's eyes, perhaps Bailey Chun was trying to support the young man he had taken a fancy to. After all, if she could show off in front of so many big shots in the world of God, she would definitely become famous. No one objected, so the matter was settled. Jiang Jiwan took a deep breath and walked forward. When she passed by Bailey Jun did not forget to remind her in a low voice. Xiao Lu, be careful. Jiang Jiwan smiled and nodded. Thank you, Patriarch. As she spoke, she continued to walk forward, and to the center of the field, facing Chu Luiyue. Yaobin glanced at the two of them. He did not know this person called Xiao Lu, but if she was valued so much by Bailey Jun, she must be quite capable. He thought for a moment and said, this match is very important. I hope that both of you can do your best, and don't have any concerns. As long as it doesn't hurt your life, everything else is up to you. Many people were shocked. They all knew that this would be a fierce battle. Bailey Jun stared at the field, his old face expressionless. Only that pair of slightly turbid, but still shrewd eyes revealed that he was not as unconcerned as he appeared to be. In fact, he had his own plans when he agreed to Jiang Jiwan's request. Jiang Jiwan had been expelled from Lingxiao College, and her reputation was almost ruined. In the world of God, she could not even raise her head. If she could win this match beautifully, everyone present would definitely look at her in a different light. At that time, it would be logical to reveal Jiang Jiwan's identity. At that time, Elder Bo Yan and the others would realize how much of a pity it was for them to give up on Jiang Jiwan. Choosing to support Chu Yu with all their might was a huge mistake. Bailey Jun's plan was perfect, and he directly ignored this match. Jiang Jiwan was facing the opponent's rank 8 warrior with the strength of a demigod. This was an extremely unfair competition to begin with. It was normal for Jiang Jiwan to win, but if he lost, he would have nothing left. Chu Luiyue looked at the young man in front of him and raised his eyebrows slightly. May I know this brother's name? Jiang Jiwan said calmly. I'm only here to exchange blows with you. You don't need to know my name. Her identity was fake to begin with. It was fine if she said a vague name, but the more details she said, the easier it would be for people to find out. Rong Xiu was still here. No matter how he thought about it, he felt that it was not safe. Just in case, he gave Jiang Jiwan a lot of good things to protect herself. This divine pearl was not worth mentioning in comparison. But in the eyes of others, this was a bit too much. This is not fair. Whispers of discussion could be heard from the crowd. What level is Bailey June at? The divine pearl that he refined with his own divine power is much more powerful than an ordinary immortal realm expert. That little Lu took out this thing the moment he attacked. Isn't he bullying others? That's right. It was originally a demigod against a rank 8 warrior. And now he even used external force. Is he afraid that he can't beat him? Actually, this matter is not as serious as you say. This is a competition in itself. No one said that it can't be like this, right? That's true, but I want to save face. It's not enough to fight a rank 8 warrior with the strength of a demigod. And I still want to take advantage of him. Although everyone present was here to find trouble with Chu Luyue, they were still of noble status. High and mighty people cared about their reputation the most. It could be explained that they joined forces to interrogate a teenager to find out the truth. But what about the competition in front of them? Wasn't this bullying? The soft voices entered her ears, causing Jiang Jiwan to feel a little irritated. She steeled her heart and urged the power in her body faster. Clear Sky Scorching Sun Wheel. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1459. The two overlapping wheels, one green and one white, suddenly began to rotate slowly in opposite directions. The middle part of the wheel made a click sound. If one listened carefully, it actually sounded like gears biting together. They were interlocked and very exquisite. As the two wheels intertwined and rotated, it also produced an astonishing pressure. The surrounding energy of heaven and earth began to quickly converge towards this side. One in front and one behind, it actually formed two energy vortexes. Hiss, to be able to fuse these two divine powers so perfectly, it's rare. It seems that this young man is not completely useless. To be able to catch the eye of Bailey June, it's naturally not ordinary. But I think there seems to be a gap between these two divine powers. It can't be considered a perfect match. This person looks to be in his 20s. If he's a demigod expert, his talent isn't considered top-notch. As for Chuyu, he seems to be only 17, right? He's already a stage 9 warrior. But now that the two of them are fighting, isn't it obvious who has the advantage? This match had nothing to do with their talent. It was only related to their current combat power. Jiang Jiwan felt like there was a ball of fire in her heart that was constantly surging, as if it would explode from her chest in the next moment. She had heard enough of such words. So what if his talent was better? Before he grew into a true expert, he was just a piece of trash. Today, she would take revenge for both old and new grudges. Go! Jiang Jiwan roared. The huge wheel immediately crushed towards Chu Luyue. Its speed wasn't fast, and it was very uniform and stable. It seemed to be too leisurely. However, wherever the wheel passed, the void collapsed, and a large area of black holes appeared. One could see how powerful it was. Before it arrived in front of her, a gust of wind had already swept over. Chu Luyue's clothes and hair fluttered in the wind. She narrowed her eyes slightly. The closer she got, the more she could feel the astonishing power between the two intertwining wheels. Once she was dragged into it, she was afraid that not even a complete corpse would be left. It was just a match to determine the winner. Why did he use such a killing move at the beginning? This young man, who was specially brought by Bailey June, seemed to have a deep hostility towards her, and even a killing intent. Whoosh! Chu Luyue flicked his wrist, and a dazzling blue-gold light flashed past. Everyone only saw a blur in front of their eyes, before they saw a sword appear in Chu Luyue's hand. The blue-gold light came from the scabbard. Chu Luyue held the scabbard with one hand, and raised his other hand, slowly grasping the slender and cold sword hilt. The surrounding power flowed like a river, causing the tassels at the end of the curl to sway gently. Chu Liyue's expression gradually darkened as he held his breath. His black jade-like eyes, which seemed to have sunk into a deep pool, gradually glowed with a piercingly cold light. An indistinct killing intent silently surged like the fog in the middle of the night. Unknowingly, everything was surrounded. There seemed to be an invisible barrier around her, isolating her from the outside world. It was as if no matter what happened outside, it would not affect her at all. Even at this moment, he was still calm and composed. Some people secretly exchanged glances. This Chuyu, it seems, that he's not that simple. Jiang Juan met that pair of cold eyes. And in an instant, her entire body turned cold. An indescribable fear suddenly rose from the bottom of her heart. She clenched her teeth, and tried her best to calm herself down, and suppress her restless heartbeat. What was there to be afraid of? The strength of a rank 8 warrior. How strong could he be? Right now she was 2 whole ranks higher than the other party. He was just putting on an act. Thinking of this, Jiang Jiwan's mood finally calmed down a little. Clang! Chu Liyue drew his sword. A streak of rainbow-colored light streaked across the sky. That's... Some sharp-eyed people's expressions changed, and they immediately sat up straight. Their eyes were fixed on the sword. Those present were all strong people of the current era. What good things had they not seen before? Their eyesight was very sharp. The moment Chu Liyue took out the Scarlet Heaven sword, someone immediately sensed that something was wrong. This is the divine weapon that the Golden Wing sect in Lingxiao College fought over in the Blue Feather Abyss? That's it. Previously in the northern region of the primitive desolation, Chu Yu also used this sword to split open the door of the mysterious space. However, the aura of the sword at that time didn't seem to be so shocking. But this is indeed the same sword. Moreover, didn't Jean D suspect that it was actually a venerable divine weapon? Such an aura, such a pressure. How could a king divine weapon possess it? In fact, although everyone had heard of this news, there were not many who really took it to heart. Because it had been too long since a venerable divine weapon appeared in the Divine Ruins world. Moreover, they actually knew the ins and outs of this divine weapon. At that time, the Golden Wing sect and Lingxiao College were fighting over it. In the end, for some reason, Jean Lei died, and Chu Yu became the owner of that divine weapon by accident. If it was really a venerable divine weapon, would Lingxiao College be willing to give it up? But what they didn't expect was that Lingxiao College was really willing to give it up. Moreover, because of the mediation of Rong Xiu and the others, the elders didn't even pursue Chu Liyue. They just let her take away a venerable divine weapon. After all, Lingxiao College was not the same as these aristocratic families. Therefore, at this moment, when they saw the red cloud sword in Chu Liyue's hand, they only realized in hindsight and were full of shock. I've already said it. Jean D stared at the red cloud sword with bloodshot eyes. Although Chu Liyue had used the red cloud sword in public before, she just waved it casually and didn't display its true power. In addition, those people's attention was elsewhere at that time, so they didn't pay much attention to it. It was not until now that Chu Liyue was about to officially take action that they realized that they had made such a big mistake. But now it was too late for regrets. After all, they couldn't openly snatch something from Lingxiao College's student in their territory, right? However, there were still some people who were quick-witted. Jiang Jiwan also saw it, and couldn't help but feel jealous. The things that Bailey June gave her were not bad, and she was very satisfied at the beginning. But compared to a venerable divine weapon, it was nothing. This Chuyu's background was unclear, and he was arrogant and undisciplined, which was very annoying. She really didn't know what the college and Rong Xiu saw in him. Suddenly, Chu Liyue threw the scabbard into the air. A brilliant ray of light streaked across the air. In the next moment, Chu Liyue held the sword with both hands and tiptoed. Her figure instantly flew out. She was very agile. She soared into the air. She raised the sword above her head. Whoosh! The surrounding energy of heaven and earth suddenly gathered toward the red cloud sword in a frenzy. In an instant, the world lost its color. It was a shock. Even the energy that was surging toward the wheel of the blue sky scorching sun was suddenly blocked by an invisible pressure. It changed direction and rushed into the red cloud sword at an even faster speed. What? Jiang Jiwan's heart skipped a beat. How could a venerable divine weapon be so domineering? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1460. But before she could digest this shock, she saw an even more frightening scene. After forcefully plundering the energy of heaven and earth that the clear sky's scorching sun wheel was devouring, the scarlet heaven sword actually started to shake the power of the wheel. The two wheels that were originally rotating in perfect harmony were now affected by the terrifying pressure and actually started to shake. Crack, crack. In the middle of the green and white wheels, a section suddenly staggered and let out an ear-piercing sound. The two forces instantly deviated from each other. They started to strangle each other. Jiang Jiwan's heart suddenly skipped a beat. The trace of fear that she had buried deep in her heart finally surged up at this moment. It easily drowned her. How could this be? How could this be? The duel had not officially started, and her opponent had only used a sword. It actually directly destroyed her attack. This move was a trump card that she had seriously practiced when she was following Bailey June. Other than the two of them, no one else knew that she would use this move. On one hand, she did not want to expose her identity. On the other hand, she wanted to get rid of Chuyu directly, so she directly chose this move. Who knew? Swoosh. Jiang Jiwan's mind raced as she quickly took out the second God's Pearl. It shot out. Bang! The God's Pearl entered the center. A vast and terrifying power surged out. In the blink of an eye, the bright white God's power quickly spread out and enveloped the entire huge clear sky scorching sun wheel. The white color was still white, and the green color also became white. The two wheels that were about to go berserk were finally controlled in time. The green God's power was devoured and completely merged with the small white wheel inside. The aura on it seemed to be even stronger than before. It continued to close in on Chu Luyue. However, this scene caused many people to frown and shake their heads repeatedly. The balance between the two gods' powers was broken by Chu Yu, and little Lu was unable to do anything about it. He could only add another God's Pearl to completely cover his green God's power and barely control it. But in this way, doesn't it mean that he didn't do anything at all, and only threw out two God's Pearls to deal with this competition? Bailey June is really good to him. He actually took out two God's Pearls so casually. I think we might be able to pull out a few more boosts later. Haha. If that's the case, why don't we just let Bailey June come up and fight with Chuyu? Isn't that more direct and convenient? Everyone discussed animatedly, and there was no lack of ridicule. They were willing to give Bailey June face, but it did not mean that they were afraid of him. Look at this match. What did it look like? What a joke. That little Lu is representing us. His actions are really shameful. If I had known this would happen, I would have sent someone stronger up there. Isn't it too late to say that now? I only hope that after using so many methods he won't lose in the end. That's hard to say. Chuyu hasn't officially made his move yet. Bailey June was also anxious when he saw this. How could he have thought that Chuyu actually had a venerable artifact? But a mere rank 8 warrior shouldn't even have the strength to pick up a venerable artifact. So how did he unleash its might and power? Chu Luyue did not care about the commotion outside, and held her breath in concentration. In fact, everything happened in the blink of an eye. Scarlet Heaven Sword's efficiency in devouring the energy of heaven and earth was very high. Under normal circumstances, she could swing her sword in the blink of an eye. But today, she deliberately slowed down her movements. The huge wheel that was emitting a dazzling light was already in front of her. It was only a few steps away from Chu Luyue. Chu Luyue's eyes sharpened. The force in her limbs and bones seemed to have been summoned and surged out together. Then, she decisively swung her sword. Scarlet Heaven Sword, break. Swoosh. The long sword slashed down. Kacha. A subtle but clear sound suddenly came from the wheel. Jiang Jiwan's smile suddenly froze. She looked in horror at a neat crack that appeared in the middle of the wheel. In the next moment, the wheel broke. The energy scattered in all directions. Boom! Following this shocking explosion, the originally majestic wheel transformed into countless specks of light that swept out in all directions. Jiang Jiwan was the first to bear the brunt of the impact. Her body was instantly sent flying. Bam! She landed heavily on the ground, and even slid quite a distance. A long trail of blood was left on the ground. Her back was burning with pain, and her internal organs felt like they were being crushed by something. Pfft! Jiang Jiwon spat out a mouthful of blood. She had not recovered from her injuries to begin with, and now that she was injured again, she was even more miserable and almost fainted. Bailey Jun suddenly stood up. He waved his sleeves, and was about to attack. However, at this moment, Rong Xiu suddenly looked over. There was a faint smile on his devilish face, but his eyes were as deep as the sea and as sharp as a knife. Clan leader, you seem to be very concerned about this person? The competition is not over yet. Wouldn't it be inappropriate for you to attack? You. Bailey Chun choked on his words. He was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. He gritted his teeth and finally sat back down. I know. There was dead silence. Princess Yao. Chu Luiyue suddenly tilted her head and looked at Yao Bin, who was standing at the side. He subconsciously looked over, and there was still a look of shock on his face. It was obvious that Chu Luiyue's current abilities had far exceeded his expectations. Did you see it clearly just now? Chu Luiyue curved her lips into a smile. That's how I won that day. Then she looked around. Her tone was still casual and calm, and her smile was gentle. Everyone, if there's anyone who didn't see it clearly, I can demonstrate it again. Digression. Yesterday, I broke my hand washing socks. I cried because of my stupidity. After a night, it's already much better. Sob sob sob. Update will continue at 6:00 p.m. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from love. Chapter 1461. Demonstrate again? Even if he had the strength to swing his sword again, Lil Lu might not be alive enough to withstand a second strike. Chuyu, don't go too far. Before Yao Bin could say anything, Bailey Jun was the first to reprimand him. Chu Luiyue turned around and blinked at Bailey Jun. Clan leader Bailey. I'm just explaining to everyone. How is that going too far? Suddenly, she had a look of realization. Oh, are you talking about me injuring this person? But we're in a competition, so there has to be a winner, right? Also, we've only exchanged one move. She looked innocent, as if she was at a loss of what to do. Uffed. A low chuckle suddenly came from the quiet crowd, but it was quickly suppressed. However, this chuckle seemed to have flipped a switch. The originally cold and solemn atmosphere became subtle. Many people could not help but laugh, and secretly exchange glances with each other. One move. Wasn't it just one move? From beginning to end, Chuyu had only swung his sword once. What's more, he didn't do anything. In the end, it was Lil Lu who did not live up to expectations. She could not win with two of Bailey Jun's divine pearls, and was even beaten to a pulp by her opponent. Not only did Bailey Jun not feel embarrassed, he even had the cheek to be angry here. What a joke. Originally, everyone thought that those who could be brought here by him must have top-notch talents. Now, it was obvious that she was an idiot who could not handle the situation. They really did not know what Bailey Jun was thinking. No one spoke, and the scene was very quiet. However, everyone's thoughts were more or less expressed on their faces. How could Bailey Jun not see it? After living for so long, how could he not see the mockery and ridicule of others? He could not feel it. Those people looked at Jiang Jiwon on the ground, then looked at Bailey Jun with meaningful eyes. Bailey Jun felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. His face was red and his throat was tight. For a moment, he did not know how to refute. It was a competition. It was a battle. Moreover, it was an extremely crucial match. He couldn't possibly stop them from making a move. Bailey Jun's blood was rushing through his veins. His heart was beating like a drum, and his temples were throbbing. He was about to explode from anger. He glanced at Jiang Jiwon, feeling both angry and distressed. Get up. If it weren't for the fact that there were so many people watching, he would have personally helped her up. But Rong Xiu's words just now made him vigilant. So he didn't dare to be too presumptuous. So he had no choice but to comply. Jiang Jiwon also felt wronged. How could she have known that this Chuyu was actually so terrifying? Once the Venerable One's divine weapon was used, it was simply unstoppable. What was the point of talking about winning or losing? In front of so many people, with the strength of a demigod, he lost to the opponent's rank 8 warrior. This was worse than killing her. She was as proud and complacent as she was at the beginning, and now she was as angry and resentful as she was angry. She struggled to get up, pulling at her wound. It was so painful that her vision turned black. Seeing the mottled bloodstains on the ground, she was shocked and her hatred for the young man in front of her increased. This Chuyu, was he here specifically to subdue her? At this moment, Chu Lue suddenly took a step forward. Jiang Jiwen was frightened and subconsciously took a few steps back. In a moment of carelessness, she fell to the ground again. More blood oozed out of the wounds on her body. It was mottled and messy, and she looked very miserable. You, what else do you want? Because of nervousness and fear, Jiang Jiwen's voice became shrill and ear-piercing. Chu Lue looked at her in surprise. I just wanted to ask if you were going to admit defeat. Why are you so nervous? Jiang Jiwen's face turned red and white. She felt that she had completely lost her face. And Bailey Jun had already turned his eyes away. Out of sight, out of mind. He really hated to see Jiang Jiwen's useless and cowardly appearance. In the past, Jiang Jiwen was confident, generous, and likable. Why did it suddenly become like this now? There were so many top experts in the Divine Ruins world present, and each of them had a high status. If they saw this scene, who knew how they would mock him behind his back? And Yuntian Tower. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look at Rong Xiu, only to see the man leaning against the back of the chair with a relaxed expression and a lazy posture. His thin scarlet lips were slightly raised, as if he was smiling. Smiling? At this time, Rong Xiu could still smile? Didn't he think that this was a loss of face for Yuntian Tower? Holy Sun, say a few words. Bailey Jun couldn't help but frown and speak. Rong Xiu tilted his head and looked over. His expression was gentle, but his eyes were cold. He had a faint smile on his face. What does the patriarch want I to say? Say what? Of course it was to speak up for Jiang Jiwen. Bailey Chun was infuriated. Rong Xiu was clearly doing this on purpose. Of course it's about this match. Bailey Jun reminded him vaguely. As long as Rong Xiu spoke, he represented Yuntian Tower's position. Chuyu probably couldn't go too far. As if he understood Rong Xiu's hint, Rong Xiu looked enlightened. He turned his gaze and looked at the arena. Chuyu, he spoke lazily. His voice was low, but it was full of magnetism. It easily tugged at people's heartstrings without batting an eyelid. Everyone pricked up their ears. Then, they heard Rong Xiu say with a faint smile. You did well. Dead silence. Bailey Jun's expression instantly cracked. Jiang Jiwen looked like she was struck by lightning. She was about to go crazy. She thought Rong Xiu would speak up for them. But, he actually went to praise Chuyu. Son of God. Bailey Jun tried to suppress the anger in his heart, but his eyes were burning with flames. Little Lu is a member of Yuntian Tower, you, patriarch. You just came out of seclusion not long ago. There are some things that you don't know. Rong Xiu interrupted him and chuckled. From the beginning to the end, I stood on junior brother Chu Yu's side, just like the academy. Now that she had won and had proven her strength and innocence, could it be that she was still not worthy of a compliment? Rong Xiu said slowly. Bailey Jun suddenly choked. He knew. Of course he knew. Jiang Jiwen had told him before that Rong Xiu took great care of Chuyu. After hearing this, he naturally didn't have a good impression of Chuyu. This time, he came with the intention of destroying Chuyu's prestige. He was so focused on helping Jiang Jiwen vent her anger that he completely forgot about this. Only now did he realize that Rong Xiu had drawn a line between them from the beginning to the end. It was their own business to lose face. What did it have to do with him? Chu Lue smiled, her eyes curved. Thank you, Your Highness. Then, she looked at Jiang Jiwen and raised her eyebrows. It seems that you still don't want to admit defeat? With that, she took another step forward. This step was like stepping on Jiang Jiwen's heart. She stopped breathing and shouted almost reflexively. I admit defeat. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1462. Because of her nervousness and fear, she shouted quickly and hurriedly. She even lost her voice. It was as if she was begging for mercy when someone grabbed her by the neck. Many people sneered, their faces full of sarcasm. That's it. She was really unpresentable. It seemed that Bailey June was really old and muddle-headed. Moreover, Rong Xiu's words just now were very meaningful. The two people with the highest status, Yun Tianke and Li Qingshan, clearly had a great disagreement. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were on opposite sides. It was just that they had not completely shed all pretense of cordiality. However, this day might not be long in coming. Chu Luiyue nodded in satisfaction, then looked at Yao Bin. Princess Yao, I wonder if you are satisfied with this competition? Yao Bin looked at the scene in front of him in a daze, his mood complicated. In a short time, the situation had taken a turn for the worse. He originally thought that Chu Yu's speech was merely an excuse for him to absolve himself. And it was also extremely absurd, not knowing the immensity of heaven and earth. But reality slapped him in the face. At this moment, when he met that pair of black and bright eyes, he felt his face burning. But it could not be helped. Before the results came out, who would have thought that Chu Yu would win? But not only did he win, but he won beautifully. Yao Bin's hands clenched and loosened. In the end, he could only sigh. I believe your previous explanation, and am willing to keep my promise. From now on, I will not suspect that you have any unusual relationship with the Black Demon Cave. Yao Bin took a while to accept reality, but it could be said that he was decisive. Then, he took a step forward and cupped his hands at Chu Luiyue. Previously, I misunderstood you, so I apologize to you. Chu Luiyue tilted her head and smiled. Princess Yao is too polite. I know that you also want to find out the truth, and I can take this opportunity to clear my name. It's a good thing. You don't have to take it to heart. The reason why Yao Bin was so aggressive toward her previously was that he believed in his heart that Chu Luiyue had something going on with Black Demon Cave. Purple Light County and the Black Demon Cave had a blood feud, so it was normal for him to have such a reaction. What was rare was that after knowing that he was wrong, he could still apologize in public. He had completely let go of his pride, which could be considered magnanimous and upright. Chu Luiyue had a good impression of him. If he wanted to deal with the Black Demon Cave in the future, he might be able to join forces with them. Of course, this was a matter for the future. This thought flashed through Chu Luiyue's mind, but she quickly suppressed it. She raised her head slightly and flicked her wrist. Clang! He sheathed his sword. With a brilliant flash of light, Scarlet Heaven's sword returned to her hand. In the surroundings, many gazes fell upon Scarlet Heaven's sword. Chu Luiyue's eyes flickered as he sneered in his heart. Today, she took out the Scarlet Heaven sword, which would definitely attract a lot of trouble. Right now, these people were restraining themselves for the sake of the academy. However, in the future, it was hard to say. He's just relying on the divine might of the Venerable One's divine weapon. A low voice that was obviously suppressing something was heard. Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at Jiang Jiwan, who had just turned around and was about to retreat. He took a step forward and blocked the other party's path. Wait! Jiang Jiwan's heart skipped a beat. She looked up at Chu Luiyue with a trace of panic in her eyes. What are you doing? I should be the one asking you that. Chu Luiyue smiled. Don't tell me you don't understand the principle of accepting defeat? I'm still here. What do you mean by that sentence just now? Everyone looked over again. Jiang Jiwan was extremely nervous. The terrifying experience from the fight just now had left a heavy shadow on her. She almost didn't have the courage to face Chu Luiyue again. However, she was still unwilling to accept it. Avoiding Chu Luiyue's intimidating gaze, Jiang Jiwan lowered her head. I didn't say anything. It seems that you're very dissatisfied with the result of the fight just now. Faced with Chu Luiyue's questioning, Jiang Jiwan was about to break down. She was already in a bad mood after losing. Everyone was praising Chu Yu and belittling her, as if there was a huge gap between them. However, that was not the case. If she also had a venerable artifact, how could she have lost? Therefore, Jiang Jiwan hesitated for a moment and chose to admit it. I'm just telling the truth. She gritted her teeth. If you don't use that venerable artifact and fight with me, it's still unknown who will win. The surroundings were silent for a moment. Everyone could hear the provocation in her words. Bailey June opened his mouth and wanted to stop her. However, after thinking about it, he swallowed those words. In fact, he also thought so in his heart. He could tell that Chu Yu's strength was much more powerful than ordinary cultivators of the same level. But it was not so incredible. The most important thing was still that venerable artifact. Chu Liyue stared at Jiang Juan for a while and suddenly smiled. Since you think so, then let's have another fight? As soon as she said that, everyone was shocked. Jiang Juan suddenly looked up and looked at her in disbelief. What did you say? Since you're not convinced, then let's change the method and beat you until you're convinced. Chu Liyue smiled, but every word she said was as sharp as a knife. It was precisely this casual attitude that made Jiang Jiwan's anger explode in an instant. The other party had a venerable artifact, she could not beat him. But if it was a normal fight, how could she not win? However, if that's the case, I won't suppress my strength anymore. Chu Liyue added. 9th stage warrior? Jiang Juan did not care. She seemed to be afraid that Chu Liyue would go back on her words, and immediately said, Okay, then it's a deal. Digression. The 6th watch might be a little later, about 6:30 p.m. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1463. Just like that, the two of them decided on a new match with just a few words. No one stopped them. Some people wanted to see if Chu Yu really had the strength to win against a demigod without the venerable artifact. Some people wanted to test the true level of Chu Yu's combat strength. There were also people who purely wanted to watch the show and didn't mind blowing things up. The only people who were worried were the people from Lingxiao College. This kid, Elder Bo Yin, wanted to dissuade them, but before he could say anything, the two of them had already decided. Moreover, this matter was proposed by Chu Yu himself. If he objected, he would look a little guilty. Bo Yin, don't worry. That kid won't lose so easily. Elder Huafeng leaned closer and said in a low voice. Elder Bo Yin turned his head and glanced at him. How could he be so sure? There was still a difference between a rank 9 warrior and a demigod. Elder Huafeng suddenly chuckled, touched his chin, and looked at the field. Others didn't know, but he knew. That kid had many trump cards. If he didn't allow him to use Scarlet Heaven Sword, he could still use other trump cards. Poor Xiao Lu. He was covered in wounds and thought that he had a chance to turn the tables. There was also Bailey Jun. If he still had a bit of rationality, he wouldn't agree to the second match now. He didn't think about it. Chu Yu suppressed his strength to that of a rank 8 warrior, and was still able to wield Scarlet Heaven Sword. How could an ordinary person compare to him? Seeing Elder Huafeng's expression of waiting to watch a good show, Elder Bo Yin felt a little strange, but his heart calmed down a lot. He also turned his head, intending to see how things would develop. Jiang Juan took out a pill and swallowed it. A warm and gentle force instantly spread to her limbs and bones. This made her feel much better. Dragging a heavily injured body, her combat strength would definitely be greatly reduced. But she wanted to win too much. What did he eat just now? Why do I smell the scent of a bewildering fragrance pill? Elder Wanjing's nose twitched as he frowned slightly. This kind of pill was very precious, and could only be refined by venerable doctors. And its effect was extremely special. This kind of medicinal pill could, for a short period of time, allow a cultivator to ignore their injuries and unleash their strongest power. Sometimes, it could even allow a heavily injured person to display strength that exceeded their normal level. However, the side effects of this bewildering fragrance pill were also very strong. This was because this was equivalent to overdrafting the cultivator's physical strength and energy. After half an incense stick of time passed, the body of the person who had taken the pill would rapidly deteriorate. If it was not treated in time, it would leave irreversible damage. Therefore, under normal circumstances, only in a life and death situation would people be willing to use this thing. This was just a competition. It had to be said that Jiang Jiwan was going all out by doing this. That is indeed the bewitching fragrance pill. Rong Xiu said calmly. Elder Wanjing's frown deepened. It's just a competition, not a life and death battle. What is he trying to do? Their precious disciple had a good temper, and was not someone to be bullied. Rong Xiu looked at the field. Chu Liyue's shoulders and back were straight, like a pine tree. After seeing Jiang Jiwen take the bewitching fragrance pill, she raised her eyebrows slightly, seemingly a little surprised. Rong Xiu lowered his eyes slightly, hiding the smile that flashed across his eyes. Her acting was really realistic. She was clearly waiting for her opponent to do this, but she still pretended to be surprised. It seemed that this time, she was determined to completely take care of her opponent. Chu Liyue did it on purpose. It was not like she had nothing better to do. Did she want to do this again, just to prove that she was stronger than her opponent? Or did she take the initiative to give up the venerable artifact and fight with her opponent barehanded? Her opponent was brainless, but it did not mean that she was the same. This move was to retreat in order to advance. It could not be simpler. Her opponent's desire to win was very strong. At this time, as long as there was a slight chance of winning, her opponent would grab it tightly. Chu Liyue thought to herself, Ba. She had always been kind, and could not bear to see others being tortured. Her opponent was about to go crazy and only wanted to die. How could she bear to look on helplessly? It was better to be kind and help Buddha all the way to the west. Please. Chu Liyue seemed to have heard the words about the bewitching fragrance pill from the people around her. She frowned slightly and looked slightly nervous. Jiang Jiwen clenched her fists. The wounds on her body did not hurt anymore, and there was constantly energy surging from all parts of her body. It gathered in her dantian. It had been a long time since she felt so full of energy, and her combat strength was off the charts. Although the bewitching fragrance pill had side effects, she was certain that she could definitely take care of her opponent within half an instance's time. In fact, it would only take one move. Jiang Jiwen's confidence increased greatly, as if she could already imagine the scene after she won. She was filled with excitement, and the expression on her face was almost impossible to hide. She did not want to hide it either. The next moment, she crossed her hands in front of her. The turbulent force gathered. The aura around her increased greatly. After a while, a cry of surprise came from the crowd. Why is her aura still increasing? Is she going to break through to the exalted god realm? Not long after that, a light appeared between Jiang Jiwen's brows. A totem appeared clearly, and the pressure on her body officially broke through to the exalted god realm. Relying on the power of the bewitching fragrance pill, she forcefully raised her realm temporarily. Many people's expressions changed slightly. When they looked at Chu Liyue again, they could not help but shake their heads. Although this was very dangerous, it was very useful. A exalted god powerhouse could easily crush a stage 9 warrior with one hand, right? Jiang Jiwen felt a tearing pain in her body. It was caused by forcefully raising her realm, but she did not care. As long as she could win, what did this matter? Die. She threw out a punch. It was simple and direct. At this time, tyrannical strength was better than any tricks. The shadows of her fists were everywhere, heading straight for Chu Liyue's face. She did not move. Why isn't Chu Yu moving? Is he stupid? Some people secretly frowned. Even if he could not win, he could run. What was the point of standing there in a daze? However, just as that terrifying power was about to crush and devour Chu Liyue, a clear cry suddenly resounded through the world. Screech! A crimson gold light burst out from Chu Liyue's body and instantly flourished. Then a huge figure appeared in front of Chu Liyue. Its entire body was golden, and its pressure was impressive. Crimson gold heavenly phoenix. Everyone was shocked on the spot. Some of them could not even suppress their impulse, and directly stood up. They stared dumbfoundedly at the ancient mythological beast that had suddenly appeared. How? That's Chu Yu's contracted divine beast. Someone suddenly shrieked with a trembling voice. Boom! Dumpling's wings flapped, and the heavy shadows of the fists dissipated with a loud bang. Jiang Jiwen was also shocked. Her whole body was cold, and great fear surged in her heart. Crimson gold heavenly phoenix. When did this happen? Dumpling, Chu Liyue said with a smile. Bring this person to have a good walk. Screech. Dumpling leaned down and clamped Jiang Jiwen with its claws. It flew up. Chu Liyue touched his chin. Half an instance's time. It would be over after 2 rounds. Digression, tomorrow is the 11th of the Double 11. I don't know if I'm going to write or look at Taba at night. Sob, 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 sob. Chapter 1464. Dumpling's extremely sharp claws pierced through Jiang Juan's skin and dug deep into her flesh. The sharp pain caused Jiang Juan's face to turn ghastly pale. Pain! The reddish gold flame burned, as if it was going to roast and devour her. Jiang Jiwan was shocked and terrified as she struggled with all her might. However, her strength was nothing in front of the reddish gold celestial phoenix. It was true that she had broken through to the great deity level, but the other party was an ancient divine beast. The two of them were not on the same level at all. What was there to fight over? It was a complete suppression. Jiang Jiwan endured the pain and forced herself to look down. She was shocked to find that she was being taken away. Where did this beast want to take her? If she could not break free after half an hour, then she was done for. Deep fear surged in Jiang Jiwan's heart. She hurriedly mobilized all the strength in her body, wanting to struggle out. Let me down. You beast. Let me go. Dumpling's gaze turned cold. She was courting death. Crack. Dumpling flew even faster while exerting force with its claws. It actually broke a few of Jiang Jiwan's ribs. Hiss. Jiang Jiwan sucked in a breath of cold air from the pain. Her whole body trembled. She even vaguely felt that those sharp claws were about to dig out her internal organs. Immense fear surged in her heart. Jiang Jiwan's pale lips trembled. She could not rely on herself. She was afraid that. Help. Clan, smack. Dumpling swung one of its wings down and directly slapped Jiang Jiwan's head. There was a dull thud. Jiang Jiwan's vision turned black, and she fainted right away. Dumpling leisurely carried the stiff Jiang Jiwan just like that and flew further away. Master said that he had to make 2 rounds. In the square, everyone was stunned by this sudden scene. For a long time, no one made a sound. She left just like that? What was going on? Seeing Jiang Jiwan being taken away, Bailey Jun was the first to react. He suddenly stood up and stared at Chu Luyue. Chuyu, what are you doing? His stern voice was filled with anger. Chu Luyue narrowed his eyes and then smiled. Clan leader Bailey, didn't everyone see clearly what I was doing? I'm competing. What kind of competition is this? That reddish gold celestial phoenix. That crimson gold celestial phoenix is my contracted divine beast. There's nothing wrong with me summoning it to battle, right? Chu Luyue's lips curved up, but her eyes were cold and clear. I've already promised not to use that divine artifact. Could it be that I'm not even allowed to summon magical beasts? Bailey Junes. Of course, there was no such logic in the world. Any cultivator who had a contract with a magical beast would always tacitly agree that the magical beast was one with them. There was nothing wrong with that. It was just that the contracted magical beast he had summoned was too shocking. Ancient divine beast. Only a few of the people present had seen it before, let alone a contract. If you think I'm breaking the rules by summoning Dumpling, then shouldn't you have said it in advance? Isn't it a bit late to mention it now? Chu Luyue said slowly. Bailey Jun's face turned pale. Say it in advance. How would he have thought that this ordinary-looking youth would actually have such a trump card hidden up his sleeve? If he had known, he wouldn't have let Jiang Jiwan fight. But it was too late to say anything now. He looked up and saw that Jiang Jiwan had been taken further away. That reddish gold celestial phoenix had no intention of coming back. Half an hour would pass soon. If Jiang Jiwan couldn't be treated in time, then ask that reddish gold celestial phoenix to bring Yuan Xiaolu back immediately. If anything happens to her, I won't let you go. Chu Luyue blinked. But isn't the competition still ongoing? Bailey Jun was fuming. What competition? I'm ordering you to stop the competition immediately. Chu Luyue's smile was polite but cold. Patriarch Bailey, you don't seem to have the right to say that right now? Bailey Jun had been the patriarch of Yuntian Tower for 100 years. He had always been high and mighty. When had he ever been refuted like this? And in front of so many people. Chu Luyue's words ignited the fire in his heart that had been suppressed for a long time. How dare you? Before he finished his words, he raised his hand and a force flew out. The force turned into a sword and flew towards Chu Luyue's chest. The sound of air breaking was ear-piercing. Everyone's expression changed. No one expected that Bailey Jun would suddenly make a move. Elder Bo Yen and Elder Wan Zheng made a move together. Chu Yu, be careful. However, there was one person who was faster than them. A golden stream of light streaked across the sky and instantly transformed into a huge net. It arrived first and surrounded the sword. Then it quickly tightened. Bang! A crisp sound was heard. The sword shattered with a loud bang. The terrifying force spread in all directions, but it was quickly swallowed by the golden net and disappeared without a sound. Then, the golden net quickly condensed into a small butterfly. It paused on Chu Liyue's shoulder for a while before quietly dissipating. Chu Liyue's eyes flickered. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. From the beginning to the end, Bailey Jun's force did not even touch Chu Liyue's body. Everyone quieted down. Their eyes wandered back and forth between Rong Xiao and Bailey Jun. They all had different thoughts. The one who made a move was actually Rong Xiao. Although they had long known that these two people were not on good terms, they had always thought that Rong Xiao and Bailey Jun would not fall out with each other for the sake of the Yuntian Tower and other factors. However, they did not expect everything to happen so quickly. Rong Xiao's interference was akin to slapping Bailey Jun's face in front of everyone. There was no turning back now that he had made a scene in front of so many people. Rong Xiao had always been far-sighted and strategizing. It was impossible that he did not know how far the situation would go once he made a move. However, he still did it. Moreover, he did it without hesitation. Even Elder Wan Zheng and the others were a step slower. The atmosphere was tense, and the space was frozen. Bailey Jun's expression was extremely ugly. He stared at Rong Xiao. "Your Highness, what is the meaning of this?" He had only been in seclusion for a few years, but the moment he came out, the world had changed. Now, Rong Xiao was becoming more and more arrogant. He actually dared to fight him in public. Where was his face? What Bailey Jun did not know was that Rong Xiao did not care about his face at all. The reason why he made a move just now was very simple. "Of course I will protect my people," said Qin Wentian. His expression was open and magnanimous, and his voice was low and pleasant. He leaned against the back of the chair, his posture languid and calm. It was as if he did not care about what happened just now at all. The competition is still going on. Patriarch, if you act so rashly, won't others think that Yuntian Tower can't afford to lose?" Before Bailey Jun could fly into a rage, Rong Xiao spoke first. A hint of a smile flashed across his lips as he reminded, "Everyone is still watching. You can afford to lose face, but don't drag Yuntian Tower down with you." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1465. Bailey Jun had never been so embarrassed. However, Rong Xiao's attitude was firm and reasonable. He didn't know how to refute it. What shocked him even more was that Rong Xiao's strength seemed to be stronger than he expected. Indeed, he only used 50% of his strength in that attack. But the fact that Rong Xiao could block it so easily was already very telling. After calming down for a moment, he took a deep breath and forcefully suppressed the resentment and anger in his heart. He couldn't drag it on any longer. Jiang Jiwan's body couldn't hold on for that long. Thinking of this, Bailey Jun took a deep breath and looked at Chu Liyue. In that case, this old man will represent her to admit defeat. This way, the competition can finally end. Everyone looked at each other. Bailey Chun really treated that person called Xiao Lu well. "Since you've said so, of course there's no problem." Chu Liyue smiled. Bailey Jun snorted and sat back on the chair. However, after waiting for a while, the crimson gold heavenly phoenix didn't return with Jiang Jiwan. His brows furrowed once more as he questioned, "Chu Yu, why is your crimson gold heavenly phoenix still wandering around there?" There wasn't much time left. Chu Liyue smiled. "Oh, you're talking about that. Dumpling hasn't come out to play for a while. It's rare for her to come out, so she's wild. It might take a while for her to come back." Bailey Jun suddenly became anxious. "A while? Then wouldn't it be meaningless for me to take the initiative to compromise? You ask it to come back immediately. Xiao Lu is injured and needs to be treated as soon as possible." Chu Liyue looked troubled. "But Dumpling is lively and sometimes doesn't listen to me. You see, Bailey Jun was about to die of anger." "What nonsense are you talking about? Since it's your contracted magical beast, it should obey you. If you ask it to come back, would it dare to disobey? How dare it? Chu Luiyue replied immediately. She blinked her eyes and smiled apologetically. Oh, you probably don't know, but Dumpling is an ancient divine beast, so its temper is a bit bigger. Sometimes even I can't do anything about it. The corners of everyone's mouths twitched. He didn't know. Who would know such a thing? They didn't have any contracts with ancient divine beasts. This Chuyu's mouth was really poisonous. Patriarch. Rongxiu suddenly tilted his head and smiled faintly. When Xiao Lu swallowed the bewildering fragrance pill, he should have thought of this result. We have to be responsible for our own choices, don't we? Bailey Jun was speechless. He was anxious and regretful. However, he did not dare to reveal Jiang Jiwan's true identity. In that case, his face would be completely lost. In the future, Jiang Jiwan might not even be able to return to the Yuntian Tower. He could be biased and protective of her. But if it involved the interests of the Yuntian Tower, not to mention Rongxiu, 36 respected Elder Ming, and the others would not let it go. Therefore he could only accept it. Time passed by bit. Seeing that half an incense was about to burn out, Bailey Jun finally couldn't help but speak again. Chuyu, this old man will say it one last time. If anything happens to Xiao Lu, you will not be able to get away with it. This Chuyu was clearly doing it on purpose. He stood up. This old man will go personally. If that crimson gold heavenly phoenix did not come back, he could go after it himself. However, just when Bailey Jun thought that Chu Luiyue would continue to stall for time this time, she suddenly smiled brightly. Patriarch Bailey, why are you in such a hurry? Look, isn't that back? What? Bailey Jun was stunned, and looked up following Chu Luiyue's line of sight. Sure enough, he saw a streak of crimson gold streaking across the sky quickly. It was the crimson gold heavenly phoenix that had left for a while. Chu Luiyue seemed to heave a sigh of relief as she waved at Tuanzi. Dumpling, you're finally back. Didn't you see how anxious Patriarch Bailey was? Don't do this again in the future. Dumpling swung its claws and directly threw Jiang Jiwan's book to the ground. Then, it folded its wings and changed back to the size of a palm, squatting on Chu Luiyue's shoulder. Chu Luiyue patted its head. Good job. Dumpling obediently and proudly went forward, wanting to rub her face. But before he could even touch it, he could already feel a wave of coldness assaulting him. Its body stiffened, and it obediently turned around. Then, it looked at Rongxiu, who was not far away with hidden bitterness. It was clearly its master, but it was not allowed to be intimate. Bah! How overbearing! Sooner or later, its master would help it take revenge. Chu Luiyue did not notice the surging undercurrent, and looked at Jiang Jiwan, who was lying motionless on the ground. At this moment, Jiang Jiwan was covered in blood and bruises, and her face was as pale as a ghost. If it were not for the last weak breath, everyone would have thought that she was dead. Bailey Jun moved, and was about to go over. Chu Luiyue was a step ahead, and walked to Jiang Jiwan's side. Don't touch her. Bailey Jun was frightened and shouted sternly. Chu Luiyue looked up with some surprise, and a trace of confusion appeared in her eyes. I just want to help take a look at her injuries. Don't worry, I'm also a celestial physician. Moreover, even if she really wanted to do something, she wouldn't do it in front of so many people. This Bailey clan leader was truly too concerned that his mind was in a mess. Chu Luiyue lowered her eyes slightly, and a deep thought flashed through her mind. If she remembered correctly, this Bailey family leader had never married in his life, and had no children. Moreover, he was very strict and harsh. The only person he cared about so much seemed to be. Thinking of this, Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. She raised her hand, and reached out to his face. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1466. Bailey Jun's heart jumped to his throat when he saw this scene. Stop! Before he could finish his sentence, Chu Luiyue's fingertips had already touched the other party's cheek. Chu Luiyue immediately understood what was going on, and her lips slowly curled into a smile. It's true. The person lying on the ground was motionless. Chu Luiyue's hand had already touched the other party's chin. Then she gently rubbed her fingertips. As if disturbed by her movements, the other party frowned and struggled to open her eyes. Jiang Jiwon had fainted and was unconscious. At some point, she suddenly felt that her face was a little itchy, and it made her very uncomfortable. The last bit of rationality she had left made her realize that the situation was not good. "Who's touching my face?" The moment she opened her eyes, the dazzling sunlight turned her vision white. After a few seconds, she finally saw the face of the person in front of her. "Ah!" Jiang Jiwon let out a shrill scream of horror. She almost reflexively raised her hand to push the other party away. However, at this time, many of her bones were broken, and her internal organs were squeezed into a ball. She was probably seriously injured. She did not even have the strength to raise her hand, let alone push the other party away. When she realized this, resentment and hatred surged in her heart. Chu Luiyue seemed to be startled by her scream. Her body leaned back slightly, but her hand was still on Jiang Jiwon's face. "Don't worry, the competition is over. I'll help you wipe the blood." "Wipe what?" You go away." Jiang Jiwon desperately wanted to retreat. Unfortunately, she was almost paralyzed at this time. Her movements only made her look like a powerless worm. "Didn't you hear what she said? You don't have to interfere." Bailey June hurried over. Chu Luiyue seemed to be at a loss. I really didn't want to do anything. Hey, what's this?" As she spoke, she flicked her wrist, and a translucent mask as thin as a cicada's wing appeared in her hand. Jiang Jiwon felt a burning pain on her face. "It hurts." In order to make this mask more comfortable, she had specially used a little method to reinforce it. If she wanted to take it off, she had to be very careful. Chu Luiyue's fierce tearing almost tore off half of her face. How could she not be in pain? But very quickly, the deathly silent atmosphere made her suddenly realize what had happened. She subconsciously raised her head and looked around. Everyone was looking at her with different expressions and strange gazes. Her face. Only then did Jiang Jiwon come back to her senses. Her heart was suddenly filled with deep fear. His entire body was ice cold. Bailey June, who was already a few steps away, suddenly stopped, his lips trembling. "It's over." Elder Bo Yin suddenly stood up, his face solemn. "Jiang Jiwon, why are you here?" They couldn't be more familiar with this face. This question also made the remaining people, who were still uncertain, come to a realization. So this is Jiang Jiwon? Wasn't she expelled from Lingxiao College? Why is she here again today? I heard that she grew up with Bailey June, and was very pampered. Her status in Yuntian Tower is very high. Didn't you see how Yuntian Tower still chose to take her in, after she was expelled and embarrassed? I really don't know what's so good about her. From the competition just now, it seems like her talent is average. Also, she's narrow-minded and not presentable. In the past, Bailey June seemed to have planned for her to be engaged to Rong Xiao. However, Rong Xiao directly chose his own princess, and didn't give her a chance at all. Now it seems like he already knew what Jiang Jiwon was like and never liked her, right? If I were Jiang Jiwon, I would hide after being expelled from Lingxiao College. I didn't expect her to be so thick-skinned. She actually used Bailey June's pampering to change her appearance and come here? Does she really not know how embarrassing this is? After today, she probably won't have any reputation in the world of God anymore, right? All kinds of discussions were unbearable to the ears. Jiang Jiwon's body trembled, and tears streamed down her face. She looked at Bailey June with red eyes. Now only the clan leader could save her. I brought her here. Bailey Chun closed his eyes and enunciated each and every word clearly. At this point, there were some things that he had to face. Elder Bo Yin sneered. We have all seen that. Clan leader Bailey, you know what I'm asking. Jiang Jiwon had already been expelled from Lingxiao College. According to the rules, she was not allowed to take half a step into Lingxiao College's territory. Now Bailey June actually brought her here? Who was this slap in the face? Bailey June was rarely questioned like this. At this time, he was also angry. Yuan is a member of Yuntian Tower. So what if I brought her here? At this point he was even angrier. Speaking of which, Yuan's performance in the school has always been good. Now, just because she made a small mistake, you guys expelled her. Isn't it too much? Elder Bo Yin was so angry that he laughed. His eyes were like knives, sweeping across Jiang Jiwan. Jiang Jiwan lowered her head guiltily. A small mistake. Clan leader Bailey. It seems that there are some things that you don't know. Didn't Jiang Jiwan tell you why she was expelled? Bailey Jun frowned. He felt that something was wrong. This tone sounded. Ah. At this time, a sharp pain suddenly came from Jiang Jiwan's body. She couldn't help but let out a shrill scream. Bailey Jun quickly ran over and helped her up. Yuan, what happened to you? Jiang Jiwan kept vomiting blood and couldn't say a word. The blood was faintly black. Chu Luyue glanced at her and kindly reminded her. It seems like half an hour has passed since she took the fragrance pill. Her yuan meridian is starting to break. Digression. I didn't sleep well last night. I feel like I've been hollowed out. Continue at 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1467. How could this be? Bailey Jun was not a celestial physician, but he knew a lot about the intoxicating fragrance pill. This was because Jiang Jiwan had asked him for this pill. When she came to the Yuntian Tower, she was poor and had nothing on her. She didn't even have the basic necessities, let alone a high-grade and precious pill, like the intoxicating fragrance pill. Fortunately, Bailey Jun came out of seclusion. As the head of the Yuntian Tower, it was easy for Bailey Jun to get this pill. Of course, he had asked around before and knew that the side effects of taking the intoxicating fragrance pill were very serious. It had to be treated within half an hour, otherwise it would cause serious damage to the cultivator's body. But he didn't expect it to be so terrible. Her yuan meridian was broken. Why did this happen all of a sudden? Jiang Jiwan wailed in pain. Her entire body, inside and out, felt as if something was nibbling on it. Her flesh, blood, tendons, and bones, her yuan meridian. The indescribable pain and numbness intertwined, almost making her want to die. Head. Save me. Please save me. Jiang Jiwan struggled to say something, and her syllables were unclear. She didn't even have the strength to finish a sentence. Seeing her like this, Bailey Chun felt terrible and hurriedly shouted, "Don't worry. Someone help." No one answered. The Spirit Firmament Academy would definitely not lend a hand. As for the other celestial physician present, they were not stupid. Everyone could see that Jiang Jiwan had been completely rejected by Lingxiao College. If they helped, wouldn't it be obvious that they were going against them? Anyone with half a brain would know that it was unnecessary to offend Lingxiao College for such a useless person. As for Bailey Jun's face, Rong Xiu was still here. Even he hadn't helped, how could anyone else? He shouted twice, but there was no response. Only then did Bailey Chun realize that something was wrong and looked around. With just a glance, he had already understood everyone's attitude, and he could not help but feel a chill in his heart. Chu Luyue was standing at the side. Seeing this, the corners of his lips curled up into a smile. Chief Bailey, some of her injuries were caused by me and Dumpling. Why don't I take a look? Before he could finish his words, Bailey Jun glared at him fiercely. His aged eyes seemed to be burning with flames. Isn't it enough that you've made her so miserable? What else do you want to do? I didn't expect you to be so ruthless at such a young age. Vicious and vicious. Elder Wan Zheng rose to his feet and pointed a finger at him. Bailey Jun, watch your mouth. Who did this Bailey Jun think he was, scolding their people in Lingxiao College's territory? His strength was not weak, but they had so many people on their side that they were not to be trifled with either. Lingxiao College had been established in the world of God for thousands of years. How could they be bullied by a brainless and blind Bailey Jun? Rong Xiu lowered his eyes slightly, hiding the murderous intent in his eyes. Bailey Jun was warned loudly, and only then did he come back to his senses. He gritted his teeth so hard that they almost broke. Jiang Jiwan struggled and groaned in pain. Her voice gradually weakened, and her face gradually turned from pale to dark. Chu Luyue took a few steps back, crossed his arms, and watched coldly from the side. Actually, she did not really want to save Jiang Jiwan. It was just that they were in Fang State City now, and she was the only one who had fought with Jiang Jiwan twice. If she really died, Bailey June would definitely blame it all on her. Anyway, with the fragrance pill this time, even if Jiang Jiwon didn't die, she would be crippled. In the future, she would probably never be able to embark on the path of cultivation. How easy it would be to die and end all troubles. If she could live and experience how a genius turned into a good-for-nothing, that would be great. However, it seemed that Bailey June would rather let Jiang Jiwon die than accept her help. It would save her trouble. It hurts. It's hot. Jiang Jiwon was in so much pain that her head was a little dizzy. Her vision gradually blurred, and she began to mumble something in a low voice. Chu Luiyue raised her head and threw away the human skin mask. Then, she tidied up the messy strands of hair on her forehead, and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. The side effects of taking the fragrance pill were very serious, and it indeed needed to be treated within half an incense stick's time. But in reality, under normal circumstances, the fragrance pill would not immediately cause such serious consequences. When Dumpling brought Jiang Jiwon out just now, she left a flame in her body. Although the flame was small, it was enough to directly ignite the power in Jiang Jiwon's body and break her yuan meridian inch by inch. In just a moment, she could completely turn her into a good-for-nothing. Chu Luiyue had long guessed that she was Jiang Jiwon, because the other party's hostility and targeting were too obvious. Even a person made of mud could not take the provocation time and time again. Moreover, Chu Luiyue was a person who would never let herself be at a disadvantage. Jiang Jiwon would not let go of her, but she did not have so much time and energy to waste on Jiang Jiwon. Today, everything would be settled clearly in this round. Cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Jiang Jiwon felt her consciousness starting to blur. After a long time, she was even numb from the pain. She was like a drowning person, desperately struggling to find a life-saving straw. She originally thought that Bailey June could help her, but she waited, and the pain in her body did not lessen at all. A strong sense of despair surged from the depths of her heart and gradually swallowed her. Yuan. Hang in there. Grandpa will bring you back. Bailey June knew that it was useless to continue wasting time here, so he made a prompt decision to bring Jiang Jiwon out of here. He moved carefully, trying to help Jiang Jiwon up. But Jiang Jiwon's injuries were too serious. Many of her bones were broken, and she could not stand at all. The slightest movement would cause heart-wrenching pain. Bailey June could only put her down and comfort her in a low voice. Don't worry, Grandpa will call someone over. As he spoke, he took out another pill and fed it to Jiang Jiwon. Dragon Breath Pill. That's a pill that's even more precious than the bewitching fragrance pill. Bailey Chun is really willing to part with Jiang Ziyuan. So what if he's generous? Didn't you see the color on Jiang Jiwon's face? I reckon that her yuan meridian is almost completely destroyed. This dragon chi pill can only help her keep her alive. In this situation, she's better off dead. Bailey June's energy and thoughts were all focused on Jiang Jiwon. How could he listen to the words around him? Chu Luiyue shook her head inwardly, finding it somewhat laughable. Bailey June really thought that Jiang Jiwon's body was not damaged enough. Dragon breath pills could replenish the qi, refresh the mind, and nourish the body. But the prerequisite was that one had to have a healthy and intact body. Now that Jiang Jiwon's yuan meridian was broken, and she could not control the power in her body, wasn't he adding fuel to the fire? She shook her head, too lazy to continue watching, and turned to leave. At this moment, Jiang Jiwon's weak voice sounded from behind her. Shangguan. You. Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1468. Chu Liuyue's expression didn't change at all. He didn't stop and continued walking forward. It was as if he didn't hear her voice, or didn't have any special reaction to the name. Bailey June looked at Jiang Jiwon. Yuan, what are you talking about? Shangguan Yu isn't here. Was her brain muddled? Jiang Jiwon forced her eyes open and stared at the back of the figure in front of her. Waves seemed to be surging in her heart. She didn't know why, but that woman's figure suddenly appeared in her mind just now. The suspicion that she had forgotten for a long time appeared again. She still felt that there was something wrong with Chuyu, That was why she had shouted out of the blue, wanting to see the other party's reaction. However, Chuyu didn't seem to have any abnormalities. Clan leader no. A white light suddenly flashed in Jiang Jiwon's mind. Since Chuyu had a close relationship with Rong Xiu, there was no reason that he didn't know about Shang Guanyu. Why didn't he react after hearing the name? This proved that there was something wrong with him. Chuyu is. She clutched Bailey June's sleeve tightly and spoke with difficulty. At that moment, the young man who had walked a distance suddenly turned around. Clan leader Bailey, although you don't believe me now, there are some things that I still have to say in advance. After the Yuan meridian is broken, we need to draw out the wild energy in the cultivator's body as soon as possible. If we force it to stay, it will only cause more damage. Jiang Jiwon's heart seemed to be blocked by something. She stared at the young man. He looked down at her condescendingly. His cold and indifferent eyes were filled with pity and sympathy. However, Miss Jiang is of noble birth. Even if you can't cultivate, you won't have to worry about food and clothing in the future. This sentence completely shattered the last line of defense in Jiang Jiwon's heart. She let out a wild, hysterical scream. Many people frowned slightly. What was she doing? She clearly didn't have the ability, but she was going crazy in the end. They didn't come here to watch this. Patriarch Bailey, I think you should hurry up and take her away. If this continues, I'm afraid that Jiang Jiwon won't be able to hold on for much longer. Someone said casually. His words were filled with undisguised impatience. Bailey June's expression changed, but he couldn't do anything about it, because he knew that everyone else present was thinking the same thing. He took a deep breath. Just then something grabbed his sleeve. He looked down and saw tears of blood falling from Jiang Jiwon's eyes. Please help me. She didn't want to become a cripple. In the past she was a blessed girl. She was the best, she was the most outstanding. She should have gotten everything she wanted, and not be like this, panicking like a stray dog. He was utterly defeated. She thought that she would have a chance to make a comeback today, but who knew that after a few rounds, she would be completely trampled under the feet of those people. If he had suppressed her to this extent, she might not have felt so bad. The most devastating thing was that she once thought that she had a chance to make a comeback, but in the end, she was ruthlessly sent to hell. Bailey June was so anxious that his eyes were red, and he made a mental note of Chu Luyue. Don't say anything first, Grandpa will help you, Grandpa won't let you suffer. As Bailey June said, he wanted to pull Jiang Jiwon up while she recovered some strength. The ground was already covered with messy bloodstains, and it was unbearable to look at. Chu Luyue looked on indifferently from the side. As if sensing her gaze, Jiang Ziyuan suddenly raised her head and looked over. There were still clear traces of tears on her face, but her scarlet eyes were cold and crazy. Chu Luyue's eyebrows moved slightly, vaguely feeling that something was wrong with her. Yuan. Bailey June was about to take her down when he suddenly found that she was staring at Chuyu, and couldn't help but feel strange. What are you looking at? Perhaps it was because she had taken the dragon energy pill. But at this moment, Jiang Jiwon felt that her body had suddenly recovered a lot. She spat out a mouthful of blood and suddenly laughed. Clan leader, you still don't know. This Chuyu is Shang Guanyu. Chu Luyue's pupils contracted slightly. When the surrounding people heard this, they were all stunned. Shang Guanyu? Who's that? This name sounds a little familiar. TSK. Isn't this the name of the princess that Rong Xiu chose a while ago? It's her. That's not right. Is Jiang Jiwon confused? She actually said that Chuyu is Shang Guanyu? After a short period of dead silence, the surrounding people couldn't help but whisper softly. Bailey June held Jiang Jiwon's hand tightly with a shocked expression. Yuan, what did you say? Jiang Jiwon smiled miserably. Her expression was crazed, and she carried a ruthless aura with her, as if she wanted to drag everyone down with her. Actually, she wasn't sure, but she always had this question in her heart. Originally, she wanted to find an opportunity to go to the sacrificial god temple, while she was at the Yuntian Tower. However, after a series of events, she didn't even see Shang Guanyu's face, let alone other things. At first, she didn't think about it. However, when she recalled everything that had happened, she felt that it was inexplicably familiar. In addition, she knew that her Yuan meridian was broken, and she was already a cripple, so she had no scruples. Since she was already in this state, she might as well take a gamble. No one would have an easy time. Chuyu, do you dare to verify her identity in front of everyone? Countless pairs of eyes fell on Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue smiled, but there was a hint of coldness in her eyes. You're confused. With that, she turned around and prepared to leave. However, Jiang Juan didn't let her go. She used all her strength and screamed, "You're scared. You're guilty, aren't you?" Chu Luiyue didn't stop walking. I don't need to pay attention to a ridiculous guess without any evidence. However, just as he finished speaking, a low and deep voice suddenly sounded out. Who says there's no evidence? Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat, and she looked up. In the air, a figure was rapidly approaching. It was Jiang Hetian. Why is he here? Everyone looked at Jiang Hetian with a strange expression. He came at the perfect time. However, Jiang Hetian turned a blind eye to their gazes. He quickly arrived at the square with one hand behind his back. He looked at Chu Luiyue and sneered. Shang Guanyu, are you still going to pretend? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1469. Chu Luiyue looked at him, and suddenly smiled faintly. Patriarch Jiang, what are you talking about? Jiang Hetian saw that she didn't admit it, but he wasn't in a hurry. He looked around, and cupped his hands at the crowd. Most of the people sitting here were of higher status than him. Everyone, do you know that the real Chuyu standing in front of you now is the current princess consort of Yuntian Tower? Shanghai Yu? The crowd was in an uproar. Guessing was one thing, but hearing it with their own ears was another. It would be a lie to say that they weren't shocked and doubtful. After all, they were somewhat curious about the legendary princess consort from outside the Divine Ruins world, who had suddenly appeared and succeeded in becoming the princess consort. Now Jiang Hetian said that Chu Yu, who had caused a lot of trouble and stirred up the entire Divine Ruins world, was Shanghai Yu. How could they not be surprised? Jiang Hetian looked at Chu Luiyue with a mocking gaze. Shanghai Yu, don't you think it's inappropriate for you to use such a fake identity to toy with everyone? Chu Luiyue sneered in her heart. As expected, the older the ginger, the spicier it was. With just a few simple words, she stood on the opposite side of everyone present. The people here today were all reputable figures in the Divine Ruins world. If they knew that they had been deceived and played in circles, how could they not be angry? No matter what the reason was, they wouldn't let her off easily. Chu Luiyue's expression was still calm, but her mind was already working quickly. Jiang Hetian must have come prepared if he dared to suddenly appear like this. What did he know? What evidence did he have? If he wasn't completely confident, he wouldn't have fallen out with him so directly. Since Patriarch Jiang said that you have evidence, why don't you show it to everyone first? Chu Luiyue smiled and raised her eyebrows. Jiang Hetian sneered. Let's see how long you can laugh. Dad. When Jiang Juan saw Jiang Hetian appear, it was as if she had seen her last savior. She hurriedly shouted and rushed over. However, her voice was weak, her face was dark, and her body was covered in blood. She was in a sorry state. Jiang Hetian's gaze shifted. Seeing her like this, his heart trembled violently. He immediately went over to support Jiang Jiwan, feeling both heartache and resentment. Ziyuan, don't worry. Daddy will definitely not let others bully you like this again. He was going to take revenge. He wanted to make Shang Guanyu pay 1,000 times the price. He had already received the news that Jiang Jiwan was coming with Bailey Jun. Although he was a little uneasy at that time, he thought that Bailey Jun had always taken good care of Jiang Jiwan and would definitely not let her suffer. Who knew? There was no time to pursue the matter now. He could only put it aside for the time being and deal with it later. Jiang Hetian suppressed all kinds of emotions in his heart and gently patted Jiang Juan on the shoulder. Ziyuan, you go over to the side and rest first. Leave the rest to father. Seeing Jiang Hetian's confident look, Jiang Jiwan felt a little relieved. She nodded and left with Bailey Jun's help. In the middle of the square, only Chu Luiyue and Jiang Hetian were left facing each other. Shang Guanyu, don't you want evidence? I'll give you the evidence. Jiang Hetian said and suddenly looked at Shi Rui'er. I heard that the second miss of the meteor sect had just contracted a legendary three-eyed eagle some time ago. Shi Rui'er immediately became vigilant. So what? It's a gift from my father. Jiang Hetian smiled. Second miss, don't misunderstand. I just want to borrow your legendary three-eyed eagle for a while. I'll return it to you in a moment. Shi Rui'er frowned. Why did he suddenly want to borrow her legendary three-eyed eagle for? She had a bad feeling and immediately refused. That's my contracted magical beast. How can I lend it to you just like that? Jiang Hetian was not surprised by her reaction and continued. Second miss, I know that Shangguan Yu, oh no, I should say Chu Yu, once saved you in the northern territory of the untainted land. It's normal for you to side with him. But now this is a serious matter. Second miss is dignified and upright. You can see the big picture. You won't be so stingy, right? Shi Rui'er frowned even more. Using these people outside to pressure her? Her face became colder. What if I don't agree? Jiang Hetian suddenly chuckled. Second miss, if you really treat him as a friend, you should agree. Wouldn't it be better if you can use this to clarify things? Shi Rui'er was a little uncertain. She turned her eyes and looked at Chu Luyue. In fact, she was still in shock. If Chu Yu was really Shangguan Yu, then Chu Luyue noticed her gaze and looked over. Their eyes met. Chu Luyue's lips curved up slightly as she smiled and nodded. Senior Sister Rui'er, since he said so then, I'm afraid I'll have to trouble you. When Jiang Hetian mentioned the legendary three-eyed eagle, she had already vaguely guessed what he was going to do. She had to admit that Jiang Hetian's move was indeed unexpected. If she did not accept it, people would inevitably be suspicious. Therefore, she had to pass this test. Shi Rui'er was a little nervous, but after thinking for a moment she nodded. Whoosh! With a clear and powerful cry, a strong and vigorous figure suddenly appeared above Shi Rui'er's head. It was Shi Rui'er's contracted mythological beast, the legendary three-eyed eagle. It was black all over, and when it spread its wings, it could almost cover the sky. Its sharp beak was frightening, as if it could easily take a person's life. Its cold and indifferent eyes were like knives quenched in ice, terrifyingly sharp. It flapped its wings and flew quickly between Chu Luyue and Jiang Hetian. The surroundings quieted down. Everyone wanted to see what Jiang Hetian's so-called evidence was. Jiang Hetian waved at the legendary three-eyed eagle. Please. The legendary three-eyed eagle hesitated for a moment then flew over. The man and the beast were only 3 steps away from each other. Jiang Hetian had a polite smile on his face. Thank you. As he spoke, a cold light flashed in his hand. Chi. There was a rapid and brief sound of something breaking through the air. The next moment, there was the hair-raising sound of a sharp weapon cutting into flesh. A silver flying knife as thin as a cicada's wing flew straight into the chest of the legendary three-eyed eagle in front of him. Screech! The legendary three-eyed eagle let out a sharp cry of pain. In fact, it had keenly sensed the danger. But the distance between them was so close that it could not dodge at all. It subconsciously flapped its wings. A terrifying force swept out. Jiang Hetian's chest tightened, and his body flew backward. This sudden scene gave everyone a huge shock. Shi Rui'er suddenly stood up, her voice stern. Jiang Hetian, you're crazy. He said that he wanted to invite her legendary three-eyed eagle over. So it was for an assassination? However, in the next moment, an even more shocking scene occurred. The dagger suddenly transformed into countless steel bars as thick as a pinky finger, quickly binding the legendary three-eyed eagle. The steel bars were densely packed with sharp barbs. It was as if the legendary three-eyed eagle would be completely cut into minced meat in the next moment. Jiang Hetian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, smiled sinisterly and smugly, and looked at Chu Luyue. Seeing its own clansmen being tortured like this, could it be that your godly three-eyed eagle can still endure it? Digression. Make up for the previous update. That's all for today, mobile users. Please browse and read for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1470. The legendary three-eyed eagle clan had always lived in groups and had close ties with each other. Once they encountered any danger, they would share life and death with each other. They would never stand by and do nothing when one of their own clan was in trouble. Moreover, Zichun was once the Eagle Lord of the legendary Three-Eyed Eagle clan. Chu Liyue's pupil shrank. She did not expect Jiang Hetian to use such a despicable method. Shi Rui's expression changed drastically. She was about to rush over. However, Jiang Hetian suddenly shouted, "Second miss, please wait. If you continue to come forward, I can't guarantee that you, the legendary Three-Eyed Eagle, will still be able to survive." You, Shi Rui's chest heaved up and down violently. Her pretty face was pale with anger. This Jiang Hetian was crazy. Did he know what he was doing? Of course, Jiang Hetian knew that he would offend the meteor sect. However, he did not care about that anymore. This was the only way to deal with Shang Guanyu. Therefore, he would not hesitate even if he had to bear the terrible consequences. When he saw Jiang Jiwan's identity exposed and her Yuan meridian ruptured, he knew that his years of preparation were in vain. Now he had no choice but to cut off all means of retreat. What was there to be afraid of? Shang Guanyu. Jiang Hetian smiled coldly. If you have the ability, just watch. As soon as he finished speaking, the steel bars that bound the legendary Three-Eyed Eagle tightened again. The sharp barbs hooked onto the eagle's body. With a slight movement, a large piece of flesh would be torn off. Don't go. Zichun's deep and cold voice came from the bottom of her heart. Chu Liyue could tell that Zichun was suppressing something in his words. After all, they were of the same race that was connected to it by blood. They were its descendants. How could he not feel heartache? However, he still chose Chu Liyue at this moment. However, this did not make Chu Liyue feel any better. On the contrary, it only made her heart heavier. Every word was like a heavy burden that pressed down on her shoulders, making it difficult for her to breathe. On the opposite side, streaks of blood had already appeared on the legendary Three-Eyed Hawk's body. Sticky, sweet, and fishy blood kept dripping down, creating red plum blossoms on the black and white jade floor. Mournful and cold, the scene seemed to freeze. Everyone quieted down as they watched the scene in silence. Although Jiang Hetian's methods were despicable, it was undeniable that they wanted to know the final answer. The situation fell into a deadlock. Zichun. Chu Liyue gently exhaled a breath of turbid air. That's your fellow clansman. I can't just stand by and watch him die. But Zichun was still hesitant. It's the same if the crimson gold celestial phoenix appears. Although Dumpling had just broken through not too long ago, her strength was not inferior to it. Chu Liyue chuckled. Zichun, I know you're the only one who can save it now. No matter how fast Dumpling was, she couldn't be faster than Jiang Hetian. At a time like this, only Zichun, who was also a Three-Eyed Hawk, could save the legendary Three-Eyed Hawk. This was one of the reasons why Jiang Hetian dared to be so confident. I can't let you fall into an unjust situation, Chu Liyue whispered in her heart. Although Zichun had been imprisoned for 1,000 years, and had no contact with the legendary Three-Eyed Hawks, except for the last time in the northern wilderness, he was still the Hawk Lord. He shouldered the responsibility of protecting the entire clan. If today's matter were to spread, Zichun would probably never be able to return to his clan. That was not something she wanted to see. Since you've contracted with me, I'll naturally protect you. Chu Liyue's voice was soft but heavy. Zichun's heart skipped a beat, and he didn't speak for a long time. Chu Liyue urged. I'll distract Jiang Hetian later. Seize the opportunity and save it. This time, Zichun finally had an answer. Okay. The steel bars cut into the hawk's flesh. The legendary Three-Eyed Hawk fell to the ground, struggling desperately. However, this only caused the steel bars to tighten even more. Gradually, the hawk's screams became softer, and its body stopped moving. Only the bloodstains on the ground were getting thicker and thicker, which was a ghastly sight. In the almost suffocating stagnation, a clear and indifferent voice finally sounded. Patriarch Jiang, you've been preparing for today for a long time, haven't you? Jiang Hetian looked at Chu Liyue with gloomy eyes, but there was a hint of excitement in his eyes as he was about to get his revenge. Of course not. How can I compare with your ability to deceive people? He said sarcastically. Chu Liyue didn't mind. He smiled and suddenly said, Patriarch Jiang, I've always been kind to people. Patriarch Jiang, I've always been a kind person. I don't think I've ever offended you, nor have I ever taken the initiative to provoke eldest Miss Jiang. I don't know why you're chasing me so closely, Jiang Hetian sneered. You know it in your heart. Why? Of course. It was because she had snatched the position of princess that originally belonged to Jiang Jiwan. Wasn't that enough? Everything had been well planned. Who knew that such a person would come out of nowhere and mess up all their years of planning? How could he not hate her? Chu Luiyue suddenly took a step forward. I don't know, but it doesn't seem to be important now. Jiang Hetian suddenly became alert. What else do you want? He inexplicably felt that Chu Luiyue was a threat, which made him faintly uneasy. Chu Luiyue curled his lips into a smile. I don't want to do anything. I just feel that there's something I need to tell you in advance. What is it? Just stand there and say it. Jiang Hetian shouted sternly. His eyes swept over Dumpling, who was on Chu Luiyue's shoulder, with some fear. The person in front of him was nothing to be afraid of, but that crimson gold celestial phoenix was really difficult to deal with. Chu Luiyue's footsteps paused, his expression leisurely. It was impossible to tell that he was the one being suppressed. I want to say, I hate being threatened the most in my life, she said slowly, with a slight drawl at the end, with a bit of bone-chilling coldness. Especially, with everything I care about as the stake. Every word was bone-chilling. Murderous intent. Jiang Hetian met that pair of dark eyes, and his heart suddenly trembled. Swoosh. Sword light flashed in Chu Luiyue's palm. The crimson cloud sword was already clenched in his hand. Whoosh. At this moment, a huge figure suddenly appeared above her head. Its entire body was jet black, and its aura was astonishing. With a gentle flap of its wings, it set off strong winds and huge waves. That pair of eyes were disdainful and noble, and it actually made people unconsciously want to submit to it. It was the legendary three-eyed eagle. This was the first time Chu Luiyue summoned his second contracted divine beast in front of these people. Everyone was shocked on the spot. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. The legendary three-eyed eagle. It's really the legendary three-eyed eagle. Is Chuyu really Shang Guanyu? It's definitely her. There has long been a rumor in the Divine Ruins world that the princess of the Yuntian Tower, Shang Guanyu, has two contracted divine beasts. One is the red-tailed phoenix. The other is the legendary three-eyed eagle. There's only one person in the world. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1471. This was admitting his identity in front of everyone. Jiang Hetian became excited when he saw this scene. He admitted it. He really admitted it. Shang Guanyu, now that things have come to this, what else do you have to say? Before Jiang Hetian could finish his sentence, Zichen suddenly opened his third eye. That eye was purple-gold in color. It was dazzling, noble, and domineering. He looked at the legendary three-eyed eagle that was tightly bound by the steel bars. In an instant, a terrifying aura descended. The bloodstains on the legendary three-eyed eagle's body suddenly burned crazily. The purple-gold flames instantly engulfed it. The steel bars broke inch by inch. As for the wounds on the legendary three-eyed eagle's body, they rapidly healed under the burning flames. Its weak aura also began to recover rapidly. That's the Eagle Master? The Meteor sect leader Shifeng was shocked. He stood up abruptly. He looked at the scene in front of him in disbelief, and rubbed his eyes hard. To be able to heal its own kind with its own strength and aura, other than the legendary Eagle Master, who else could it be? He had only read about such rumors in some ancient books, but he had never seen it with his own eyes. Back then, when he accidentally caught the legendary three-eyed eagle that was alone, he was overjoyed for a long time. Hence, he specially studied it for a period of time. The noble bloodline power in the Eagle Master was the foundation of the legendary three-eyed eagle tribe. With just a command, thousands of legendary three-eyed eagles would pledge their lives to follow it. For thousands of years, even the ordinary legendary three-eyed eagles were rarely seen in the world of Divine Ruins, let alone the Eagle Master, a powerful existence that only existed in legends. Wah! What? Hearing Shifeng's words, everyone present was shocked. This Chuyu? No, it's Shang Guanyu. It wasn't enough for her to contract with a legendary three-eyed eagle, but she also had an eagle master that was in existence that was on par with them. Now, it had become the contracted divine beast of Shengguanyu. What's the origin of this Shengguanyu? Not only does she have a crimson gold heavenly phoenix, but she also has an eagle master of the legendary three-eyed eagle. In the dead silence, someone muttered absent-mindedly. Ordinary people had never even seen a top-notch mythical beast, yet she easily possessed two of them. How is this possible? Some people regained their senses, but they still couldn't believe it. The crimson gold heavenly phoenix is an ancient divine beast, while the three-eyed eagle lord also has a noble status. In terms of preciousness, it's almost impossible to determine which one is better. Logically speaking, these two mythological beasts are extremely arrogant. It would be difficult for them to even form a contract with a human, let alone to serve the same master? Preposterous. Ridiculous. No one would believe it even if he told others about it. But now, everything was happening right in front of their eyes, and they couldn't help but question it. Sharuayer also covered her red lips, her beautiful eyes full of shock. No wonder, no wonder. At that time in the north of the great desolate land, those three-eyed eagles had besieged her. Later, when Chuyu appeared, the matter was smoothly resolved. Almost everyone thought that after Chuyu entered the barrier of the legendary three-eyed eagle, everything pointed to disaster. But in the end, Chuyu still came out unscathed. At that time, all she thought about was the legendary three-eyed eagle that she had lost and regained. She didn't think about what was going on. Now that she thought about it, who else could make so many legendary three-eyed eagles compromise other than the Eagle Lord? This kid actually formed a contract with the Eagle Lord. The corner of Elder Hua Feng's eyes twitched violently. At that time, he thought that Chuyu had relied on the crimson gold heavenly phoenix to solve the problem. But now it seemed that he was completely wrong. With a few trump cards in hand, wouldn't he be able to use whatever he wanted? To think that he was so nervous and worried at that time. It's the girl. Elder Bo Yin took a deep breath and slowly reminded. Elder Huafeng choked. I know. Since she was willing to summon the legendary three-eyed eagle, it had already proven her identity. Elder Huafeng was about to say something when he suddenly caught a glimpse of Elder Wanzheng, who was in a daze. He didn't seem to have realized what had happened. His face was expressionless and a little stiff. Elder Huafeng coughed and prodded him with his elbow. Hey Wanzheng, are you alright? Suddenly knowing that his disciple had turned from a boy to a girl. This feeling. Shengguanyu? Elder Wanzheng murmured softly. She's Shengguanyu? Elder Huafeng looked at him worriedly. Could it be that he was confused? Don't worry, whether it's a boy or a girl. They're all equally outstanding. No, it's actually better than before. Wanzheng, you've made a fortune this time. Putting everything else aside, just these two divine beasts alone were enough to kill everyone in an instant. If they could take such a cultivator as their disciple, anyone would be so happy that they wouldn't be able to sleep for a few days, right? If the disciple was outstanding, the master would also benefit from it, right? But Elder Wanzheng wasn't thinking about that at this moment. He turned his neck and looked at Rong Xiao. Ever since Jiang Hetian appeared and pointed out that Chuyu was Shengguanyu, he hadn't done anything. He just sat there as if it had nothing to do with him. Why was he so calm? Elder Wanzheng swallowed his saliva and couldn't help but ask. Rong Xiao, is my disciple really your new princess consort? The people of Lingxiao College immediately looked over in unison. I almost forgot. Since this matter had something to do with Rong Xiao, he naturally knew about it long ago. Slap. Elder Huafeng slapped himself on the head and gritted his teeth. I see. Why else would Rong Xiao care so much about Chuyu? It turned out that Chuyu was his new princess consort. When Rong Xiao heard this, he turned his head and smiled. Thank you for taking care of me during this period of time. His voice was low, and there was a rare trace of gentleness and affection in it. The few elders suddenly felt as if they had been stabbed by a knife. As for Luo Shishir and the others who were standing behind him, they were so shocked that they were speechless. When she heard Rong Xiao's words, Luo Shishir suddenly came back to her senses. She looked at Mu Hongyu in a daze, and saw that she was staring at the field nervously. She clenched her fists tightly and wished that she could rush forward to help. Mu Hongyu already knew? Sure. Luo Yinming looked at her worriedly. Tears welled up in Luo Shirshi's eyes. She smiled and shook her head. Suddenly, she felt as if a rock had been lifted from her heart. This was good. You are quite capable. Jiang Hetian was also shocked by the incident with the Eagle Master. He only knew that Sheng Guanyu had contracted a three-eyed eagle, but he didn't expect him to be so powerful. However, it didn't matter. After all, as long as he exposed Sheng Guanyu's identity, everything else would be easy. Sheng Guanyu, what is your motive for deceiving your superiors and concealing your identity? Jiang Hetian questioned in a deep voice. You can even disguise your identity. Who knows if you are doing something shameful? Chu Luiyue smiled. I only do things that are shameful. As she spoke, she flicked her wrist and tiptoed, heading straight for Jiang Hetian. Today, she was going to let them all clearly understand that she was not to be trifled with. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1472. Chu Luiyue's sudden action shocked everyone. Weren't they talking about her identity? Why did they suddenly want to fight? Moreover, she was no match for Jiang Hetian. Before everyone could figure it out, Chu Luiyue had already arrived in front of Jiang Hetian in the blink of an eye. Jiang Hetian didn't expect Chu Luiyue to attack as soon as she said so. Swoosh! Dumpling's figure rapidly grew. Reddish gold flames spewed out and instantly surrounded Jiang Hetian. The surrounding temperature rose rapidly, and Jiang Hetian immediately fell into a sea of fire. The terrifying flames continued to roast him, causing Jiang Hetian to tremble in fear. He might not be a match for this ancient divine beast. Sheng Guanyu, are you crazy? Jiang Hetian frantically retreated as he questioned her sternly. There were still so many people around watching. She actually dared to attack in front of so many people. Chu Luiyue was too lazy to speak and slashed down with her sword. When she was a stage 8 martial artist, she could only use her full strength once. Now that she had broken through to the intermediate stage of stage 9, she could basically use her sword 3 times in a row. Her strength was not as good as Jiang Hetian's, but with Dumpling and Zichen around, she might be able to fight. At this time, Zichen flapped his wings and flew behind Jiang Hetian in the blink of an eye. Jiang Hetian had nowhere to retreat. In front of him was the reddish-gold heavenly phoenix. Behind him was the Eagle Lord. And there was also a Sheng Guanyu whose strength had greatly increased. With a wave of his sleeve, he set up a barrier around his body. At this time, Shirue's three-eyed eagle had completely broken free from its restraints and flew back. Shirue carefully and nervously checked it, and found that most of the wounds on its body had already scabbed over. And it seemed that its aura was normal, and had basically recovered. She looked at the battlefield with mixed feelings. Eagle Lord Sheng Guanyu. Father! Jiang Jiwan exclaimed worriedly. Bailey Jun hurriedly pressed her shoulder. Yuan, don't worry. That Chu Sheng Guanyu is no match for your father. Let's just watch. As he spoke, he also looked ahead with a frown. So this is the consort chosen by the Holy Sun. Heh, how ridiculous. She disguised her identity to sneak into Lingxiao College, and even caused so much trouble. Was this what Rong Xiao? Today, in front of these big shots of the Divine Ruins world, Yin Tianke had lost all face. No wonder those people repeatedly when he wanted to go to the Divine Sacrificial Temple. They were not even Estes. He is suppressing the anger in his heart. Teet twos two. How ts he? Teet. S is outs ofs. Sheng Guanyu's consort must be removed from her position. Jiang Juan knew that her father was telling the truth, but for some reason, she still felt uneasy. Sheng Guanyu, she's really full of tricks. She had suffered a crushing defeat in the past few confrontations, so she couldn't help but be wary of Sheng Guanyu, who knew what other trump cards she had. Moreover, no matter what the outcome was, her Yuan meridian was already broken. From now on, she was completely ruined. Jiang Jiwan's eyes were filled with deep despair and resentment when she thought of this. If father could get rid of Sheng Guanyu while he was at it, That would be for the best. A thought flashed across her mind, and she instinctively turned around to look at Rong Xiao. That man was sitting in his seat. His handsome and seductive face was calm. It seemed like he didn't seem to care about what was happening in front of him. He's not going to make a move? Jiang Jiwan bit her lips as joy surged in her heart. Of course, Rong Xiao wouldn't make a move. Shang Guanyu was the one who was in the wrong. Is he going to offend everyone here for a woman like her? The crowd was actually very curious about Rong Xiao's attitude. Shang Guanyu was his consort after all. Shang Guanyu was the one who chose her. Even if one were to think with their toes, they would know that Shang Guanyu liked her. But now the situation was a little complicated. If Rong Xiao acted rashly, some people would be unhappy. Many people secretly exchanged glances. It seems like Rong Xiao will still prioritize his and Yuntian Tower's interests after weighing the pros and cons. As for Shang Guanyu's consort might be important, but she was still dependent on Rong Xiao and Yuntian Tower. How could Rong Xiao give up Yuntian Tower for Shang Guanyu? Shang Guanyu's consort might have. The elders of Lingxiao College were also filled with doubts. Rong Xiao has always treated Shang Guanyu well, and it was obvious that he was deeply in love with her. Why is he standing by and watching? Elder Wanzheng couldn't help but stand up and wanted to help. Shang Guanyu is my disciple after all. How could I let others bully her? But before he could take a step forward, Rong Xiao looked over. Shang Guanyu's thin lips curled into a smile. Elder Wanzheng, please wait for a moment. Elder Wanzheng frowned. Wait. Shang Guanyu is running out of time. Shang Guanyu may have 2 mythical beasts to help her, but Jiang Hetian is much more powerful than her. Elder Wanzheng didn't dare to take the risk. Rong Xiao's smile deepened. Shang Guanyu is still angry. You have to let her vent her anger. Elder Wanzheng was stunned. You. Rong Xiao didn't do anything just to. Let's that girl vent her anger? Is he so sure Shang Guanyu will win? Isn't he a little too confident? Elder Wanzheng muttered to himself. He glanced at Rong Xiao and hesitated. Finally he sat back down. After a pause he said in a muffled voice. Anyway, if my disciple gets hurt, you have to take responsibility. Rong Xiao nodded. Shang Guanyu's expression was dignified, but also arrogant. Of course. Chu Liyue's heart was indeed filled with anger. Ever since she went to the Yuntian Tower, she had inexplicably provoked Jiang Hetian and his daughter. Shang Guanyu's Bailey Jun was also involved. Shang Guanyu didn't think she had done anything wrong to them. Shang Guanyu even let them off because the Immortal Water Mausoleum was Yuntian Tower's #1 unit. Shang Guanyu's parents didn't give up. Shang Guanyu's face was already exposed. Shang Guanyu didn't have to give them face anymore. Shang Guanyu had to get back at them no matter what. Crack! Shang Guanyu's sword fell, and the barrier around Jiang Hetian shattered. Shang Guanyu's sword pointed at Jiang Hetian. Splatter! Shang Guanyu's sharp sword qi reached Jiang Hetian, and a bloody wound appeared between his eyebrows. Digression. Shang Guanyu, Shang Guanyu, Shang Guanyu, Shang Guanyu. 6 p.m. Chapter 1473. This sword was so terrifying. A trace of shock flashed through Jiang Hetian's heart. He came late, and did not see how Chu Luwe defeated Jiang Jiwan with a single strike. Thus at this point, he didn't know that Chu Luwe was holding a real supremacy divine weapon. Jiang Hetian was shocked and angry when he sensed a few drops of blood rolling down his forehead. However, he was in a dilemma. No matter what choice he made, it would be a tough battle. Crash! He made up his mind and spread his feet apart, his expression solemn. Vigorous force erupted from his body. The pressure was astonishing. A chill spread out from his body, and quickly spread to the surroundings. A thick layer of ice condensed on the ground, under his feet, at a speed visible to the naked eye. A thin layer of silver ice armor also appeared on his hands. Sharp, sharp. Under the sunlight, it reflected rays of cold light. Chu Luiyue acutely sensed that the surrounding space was affected by this power, and began to become viscous. That was Jiang Hetian's god realm. The speed of the force in her body began to slow down. Every inch forward became more difficult than before. It was as if there were countless hands desperately trying to intercept Scarlet Heaven's sword. The sword, which should have been a clean cut, became sluggish and slow. Wave after wave of pressure came crashing down on her, crushing every inch of her body. Chu Luyue could almost hear the creaking of her bones as they were crushed. Intense pain swept through her entire body. Chu Luyue gritted her teeth as a sweet, fishy taste welled up in her mouth. Jiang Hetian had been a venerable god powerhouse for decades. Although he was still a distance away from breaking through to the next level, he was still much more powerful than the average venerable god powerhouse. Chu Luyue might be able to put up a fight against a demigod powerhouse, but against such an experienced and powerful venerable god powerhouse, it was a little difficult. God realm. That was the biggest gap between her and her opponent. At this moment, Jiang Hetian suddenly moved. His figure instantly disappeared from where he stood, and only the sound of ice shattering could be heard. In the next moment, he had already appeared behind Chu Luyue. The distance between the two of them was merely 3 steps. His gaze was vicious as he raised his hand and punched forward. Icebreak Claw. The moment he raised his hand, the surrounding heaven and earth energy seemed to have received some kind of strong summon and rapidly gathered. The wind howled. A cold wind blew. Chu Luyue felt a chill run down his spine. At this moment, the string in her mind immediately tightened. Jiang Hetian's movements were extremely fast. When Chu Luyue turned around to counterattack, it was already too late. This claw, she had to endure it. Sheng Guanyu is still too young. Even if she is at the middle stage of the 9th level, how can she be a match for a high god? Yes. As long as Jiang Hetian displayed his god domain, he could easily control and crush him. And that Icebreak Claw is the trump card of the Tomb of Immortal Water. Just this move alone, I'm afraid Sheng Guanyu will be defeated. Although those 2 divine beasts are powerful, this is a duel between 2 cultivators. There's a limit to what they can do. The crowd discussed in low voices. Clearly, they were not optimistic about Chu Luyue's current situation. Elder Wan Zheng and the others could not help but want to attack. However, when they saw the calm Rong Xiu beside them, they suppressed their uneasiness and continued to wait. The sharp ice armor was aimed at Chu Luyue's back. It was about to pierce through her chest. However, at this moment, a golden light flashed around Chu Luyue's body. Pure gold armor. In the blink of an eye, the golden soft armor covered her body perfectly. Clang! An ear-piercing sound was heard. The moment the ice armor touched the layer of armor, Chu Luyue moved her legs slightly and quickly twisted her slender waist. Whoosh! Chu Luyue deflected most of the force from the ice armor. It only left a shallow white mark on the armor before it quickly moved away. Chu Luyue used this force to leap forward and roll on the ground. She quickly escaped from Jiang Hetian. Then, with one hand on the ground, she flipped her hand and threw out a sword. A heavenly water rainbow light. It flew through the air. Jiang Hetian was still shocked that Chu Luyue had such a tough armor. In the next moment, he saw a blur and Scarlet Heaven's sword was flying toward him again. He snorted coldly and did not think much of it. This sword was powerful, but it was a pity that its owner was only a stage 9 martial artist now. The space around him was his god realm. Everything here was under his control. Why would he be afraid? Crack. The sound of something shattering was suddenly heard. Jiang Hetian's heart skipped a beat. He quickly turned his head to look in the direction of the sound. What he saw almost scared him out of his wits. A cluster of reddish gold flames was burning at the edge of the god territory that he set up. It actually burned a black crack. Reddish gold heavenly phoenix. Jiang Hetian suddenly thought of something in his mind. As an ancient divine beast, the reddish gold heavenly phoenix was also able to execute a god territory. That reddish gold flame was its god territory. At this time, the 2 god territories were clashing. It was clear that he was at a disadvantage. How could he forget this point? He had to end the battle quickly. Jiang Hetian made a prompt decision and stomped fiercely on the ground. Rumble! The loud noise was deafening. The thick layer of ice that condensed on the ground cracked rapidly. Streaks of white cold air mixed with fine and sharp ice cubes headed straight for Chu Luyue. Before long, that cold air already completely surrounded Chu Luyue. Chu Luyue's entire body tensed up. She flipped over and got up. With a thought, a shabby and ancient black shield appeared in front of her. Clang! The shield stood tall. It blocked Chu Liyue's figure completely. When Jiang Hetian saw that black shield, he didn't take it to heart. The corners of his mouth even revealed a sneer full of mockery. At this time, it was too naive to think that a shabby shield could block his attack. However, before the smile on his face could fully spread, another heart-stopping shattering sound came. He hurriedly looked in another direction. Sure enough, on the other side of the god territory, a purple-gold light had already transformed into a sharp awl, breaking open a second hole in the god territory. Soon, Jiang Hetian's god territory was attacked from both sides by Dumpling and Zichen's god territory. It collapsed inch by inch. Large patches of black holes appeared in midair. Turbulence roared and space distorted. It was a shocking sight. Without that layer of obstruction, Reddish Heaven's sword immediately changed direction and accelerated at the same time. It went straight for Jiang Hetian's face. Jiang Hetian's heart skipped a beat. Why is this sword chasing after me so closely? What he didn't know was that the venerable artifact had an artifact soul and was very spiritual. The artifact's soul was closely connected to Chu Liyue and understood her intentions. As long as she thought about it, she could command it like an arm. Looking at Reddish Heaven's sword that was rapidly approaching him, Jiang Hetian subconsciously wanted to retreat. However, when he moved, he was shocked to realize that he was trapped in the position where the three god territories were clashing. He couldn't move at all. This time, to Reddish Heaven's sword, he had become a complete target. Chi! The longsword broke through. It pierced through his chest. A line of blood spurted out. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1474. Everything happened too quickly. The reddish gold and purplish gold lights intertwined, dazzling everyone's eyes. Before they could see what had happened, the battle was already over. Bang! Jiang Hetian's legs gave way, and he fell to his knees. His eyes were wide open, and blood slowly seeped out of the corner of his mouth. There was a bowl-sized hole in his chest, and blood was gushing out. The blood was fresh and red, and it was still steaming. It dripped onto the layer of ice that had not melted, and it quickly cooled and condensed. This scene was really strange and frightening. Everyone quieted down, unable to believe what they were seeing. Jiang Hetian was a great deity. Shangguan Yu's sword had pierced his heart. She was clearly trying to take his life. Dad! A mournful cry of despair broke the silence. Jiang Jiwan looked at what had happened in front of her in disbelief. Her face was pale, and her body was trembling. Shangguan Yu, it was all Shangguan Yu's fault. She rushed forward almost uncontrollably. But after taking a step, her legs gave way, and she fell to the ground. If it wasn't for Bailey Chun supporting her, she would have collapsed to the ground. She was already injured, and her heart was filled with grief and resentment. Now that she was angry, she spat out a few mouthfuls of blood and almost fainted. Yuan. Bailey Jun was worried and distressed. This child had been with him for so many years, and she had never suffered or been tired. However, she had been tortured during this period of time. He supported Jiang Jiwan and looked at Chu Liyue sternly. Shangguan Yu, how dare you? Because he was full of anger. His voice was like thunder, and it was so loud that it made people's ears go numb. However, Chu Liyue didn't even look at him. She slowly got up, and her dark and cold eyes were filled with a shocking murderous intent. Swoosh! Scarlet Heaven's sword flew back to her hand. There was not a single trace of blood on the sharp silver blade. She looked at it with satisfaction, then looked at Jiang Hetian. Bang! Jiang Hetian's god domain vanished with a loud rumble. This caused his expression to turn gloomy once again. He opened his mouth, but more blood gushed out. His eyes, which were originally arrogant and full of disdain, were now filled with fear and resentment. Soon he fell to the ground. Several streaks of light flew out from his body, and then condensed into a translucent phantom in midair. It was Jiang Hetian's soul. Seeing this scene, many people's expressions changed slightly. Jiang Hetian doesn't have a divine body. Hasn't he been stuck in the high god realm for many years? Logically speaking, he should have refined his divine body by now. In the past, he was always so arrogant, and I thought that he had already become one. Who knew? He was just pretending to be a wolf. Hasn't he always been like this? In the past few years, he had relied on the Yuntian Tower to do as he pleased. People who don't know him would think that he's the one in charge of the Yuntian Tower. Uft. Even if he doesn't have a divine body, as a high god, it's really embarrassing to be beaten to such a state by a middle stage rank 9. If I were him, I would be too ashamed to go out in my life. Haha. He was able to do as he pleased for so many years because of his thick skin. Of course, I can't compare to him. Many people chuckled softly. Jiang Hetian's status in the Yuntian Tower was considered honorable. Everyone called him Patriarch Jiang. However, in the outside world, in front of the big shots of the divine ruins, he was nothing. In the past, most of them were polite to Jiang Hetian because of Rongxiu. Now Rongxiu's attitude was very clear. He was clearly on Shang Guanyu's side. Then why should they be nice to Jiang Hetian? Unfortunately, Jiang Hetian was about to go crazy at this time, and he did not care about that at all. He only knew that his physical body had been destroyed by Shang Guanyu. For a cultivator like him, it would take a lot of effort to reform his physical body. Jiang Hetian's voice was filled with anger and resentment. Shang Guanyu, the Immortal Water Mausoleum, is the head of the 28 divisions of the Yuntian Tower. And I am the patriarch of the Jiang family in the Immortal Water Mausoleum. How dare you treat me like this? Chu Luyue suddenly laughed. Patriarch Jiang, you seem to have forgotten my identity. Jiang Hetian choked. Chu Luyue took a step forward. Her back was straight, like a pine tree pressing down on snow. Tough, arrogant, honorable. She raised her chin slightly and pulled off the mask on her face. A gorgeous face appeared before everyone's eyes. The surroundings suddenly quieted down. She was as bright as the sun and as beautiful as the moon. Her eyebrows were like distant mountains, her nose was tall and straight, and her red lips were slightly raised in a perfect arc. Especially her pair of watery eyes, which were like black jade, rippled with mist and shone with boundless brilliance. In that instant, her entire aura underwent a huge change. The elegant and gentle young man was gone. In his place was a stunningly beautiful and honorable young woman. She clearly didn't do anything, but there was a noble aura in her bones that made people unconsciously look up to her. She smiled and slowly reminded him, "Don't worry. I, Shang Guanyu, am the princess of the Yuntian Tower. I am the ruler, and you are the subject. Not to mention teaching you a lesson. Even if I personally kill you here today, you can't complain at all. If the ruler wants the subject to die, the subject has no choice but to die. There is no right or wrong here, only nobility and inferiority. You offended your superiors, and even tried to take my life. Jiang Hetian, even if you have 10 lives, it won't be enough to atone for your sins today." Every word was sonorous and Jiang Hetian was speechless. At this moment, Elder Huafeng and the others also saw Chu Luyue's true appearance. Everyone's expression changed drastically. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1475. Hearing this voice, Chu Luyue's heart skipped a beat, and she turned her head to look. The elders were able to see her face even more clearly. However, after a brief moment of shock and joy, the few of them were a little uncertain. This face, she was indeed 70% to 80% similar to the girl in their impression, especially her eyebrows and expression. They were simply carved from the same mold. But her age didn't seem right. After a few years, that girl should be in her 20s, but the Shang Guanyu standing in the middle of the square was clearly 17 or 18 years old. Something seems wrong. Elder Huafeng couldn't help but mutter softly. She's not you, right? Actually, he wasn't sure either. In the past few months, he had become familiar with her. There were a few times when he felt that he saw a familiar shadow on her. However, those thoughts were quickly dispelled by him. Appearance, age, aura. All of these were different. Moreover, if she was really her, why didn't any of them notice this in such a long time? Was it because her acting skills were too good? Or Were they two different people? Elder Bo Yin was also a little uncertain. He frowned and gripped the armrest of the chair tightly with one hand. After pondering for a moment, he couldn't help but say, "She's not." Previously, she was on the Azure Cloud roll. If the truth was as they guessed, then her name, Chuyu, wouldn't have successfully appeared on the Azure Cloud roll at that time. Elder Huafeng paused. But she's too similar. It wasn't just her appearance, but more importantly, her demeanor and temperament. In all these years, Lingxiao College had never had such a troublesome student. There were only these two. It was hard not to be suspicious. "Wan Zheng, what do you think?" Elder Bo Yin asked in a low voice. As their master, he should know more than them, right? Elder Wan Zheng didn't speak for a long time. He only stared at Chu Luyue. Countless thoughts flashed through his mind in a chaotic and noisy manner. However, when he tried to think about it carefully, he found that it was a complete blank. Too many things had happened today, and now he was completely stunned. "Wan Zheng." Elder Bo Yin called out to him uneasily. Elder Wan Zheng's lips quivered. Finally, he opened his mouth with difficulty. "If she really is, then is she still my disciple?" At that time, Yuer had acknowledged the dean as her master. Elder Bo Yin and the rest did not expect him to still be thinking about this at this time, and were speechless. A moment later, Elder Huafeng patted him on the shoulder. "Let's leave it to the heavens." Chu Luyue could vaguely hear their conversation. For a moment he felt helpless and amused. She knew what they were looking at, and what they were guessing. Seeing this face that was so similar to the one from before, this was inevitable. It was better to wait until everything was over before explaining to them. Thinking of this, Chu Luyue looked at Jiang Hetian again. At this time, Jiang Hetian was furious. He had never expected that he would come here today to expose Shangguan Yu in front of everyone and ruthlessly trample on her. It would be best if he could take this opportunity to pull her down from the position of princess consort. How many people would she offend by disguising her identity and deceiving everyone? However, he never expected that Shangguan Yu was not a pushover. Not only did she not feel the slightest bit of guilt or embarrassment from having her identity exposed, she became even bolder and directly fought with him. She even threatened to kill him. Where did her confidence come from? Jiang He was so angry that he laughed and turned to look at Rong Xiao. "Your Highness, you have seen the current situation. Don't you have anything to say?" He did not believe that Rong Xiao would abandon the entire Immortal Water Mausoleum for Shangguan Yu. Rong Xiao rubbed his chin and pondered for a moment before saying, "Princess Consort tried to murder Princess Consort. You plotted to murder the Princess Consort. You should be beheaded." His voice was low and lazy, like the wind sweeping the strings of a zither, elegant and elegant. However, every word that came out of his mouth was like the sharpest blade, terrifyingly cold. His biting cold killing intent spread without any concealment. The surrounding air froze inch by inch. All the noise disappeared in an instant. The scene froze. Everyone looked at Rong Xiao with shock and disbelief. Beheaded? Did Rong Xiao just say those two words? Jiang Hetian was also stunned. He wanted to threaten Rong Xiao with the Immortal Water Mausoleum, but he did not expect that Rong Xiao would side with Shangguan Yu without hesitation. He even said that he wanted to kill him. He was the holy son of Yuntian Tower. Every sentence, every word, was a golden rule that could not be disobeyed. He said he wanted to kill him. Holy son. Jiang Hetian suddenly raised his voice. It was piercing to the ears. Are you really going to abandon the Immortal Water Mausoleum? The Immortal Water Mausoleum was the leader of the 28 tribes. If Rong Xiao broke ties with him, the Immortal Water Mausoleum would be in chaos. In the end, the one who would bear the loss would still be Yuntian Tower. How could Rong Xiao not understand this? However, when Rong Xiao heard this, the corners of his lips suddenly curled up. He raised his eyebrows and looked at Jiang Hetian. Patriarch Jiang, I should be the one asking you this. From the moment you colluded with the enemy, tried to murder the princess, and even tried to take control of the Yuntian Tower, you should have expected this day. Jiang Hetian felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. What did you say? He suddenly felt guilty, and even his voice was trembling. Rong Xiao stood up. His figure was tall and straight. As he stood there, he exuded an oppressive aura. Instantly, he created an extremely strong pressure. Come here. He waved at Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue walked toward him. Rong Xiao carefully wiped away a drop of blood that had accidentally splattered on her cheek. His fingertips were warm, and his movements were restrained and gentle. However, there was an indescribable majesty and dominance. Everyone was stunned. Who had ever seen the holy son of Yuntian Tower, who killed without hesitation, treat someone so gently and carefully? Then, he looked at Jiang Jiwan. His eyes were extremely calm. I will give you and your father 15 minutes to say your final goodbyes and decide who will die first. Digression today is over. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1476. It was a simple and concise sentence, but it had already decided the life and death of these two people. Dead silence. After a moment, Jiang Jiwan murmured in disbelief. Your Highness, what did you say? Rong Xiao lifted his eyelids slightly, his eyes filled with a biting cold murderous intent. What, your ears are not working now? Jiang Jiwan's face was pale. Her body was on the verge of collapse, and her knees gave way. She actually almost fainted. Bailey June immediately shouted, Saint, isn't this decision of yours a little too hasty? Even if you don't care about the lives of the father and daughter, you should at least think about the immortal water tomb? If Jiang Hetian doesn't care about it himself, then why should I waste my effort? Rong Xiao's expression was indifferent as he interrupted Bailey June. Bailey June choked. Recalling Rong Xiao's words, a trace of uneasiness gradually surged in his heart. What did this mean? Patriarch, you just came out of seclusion, so there are some things that you don't know. I will explain it to you today, so that they can all die with a clear understanding. As Rong Xiao spoke, he smiled slightly and looked at Jiang Hetian. A formless pressure pressed down on him. Jiang Hetian met that pair of deep, seemingly bottomless phoenix eyes. He felt as if his entire body had been stripped bare and seen through. Jiang Hetian, as the patriarch of the Jiang family in the immortal water tomb, you should be loyal to the Yuntian Tower. However, your heart is not right, and you colluded with outsiders to murder the princess consort. The evidence is conclusive. In the past, I was extremely tolerant of your Jiang family in the immortal water tomb on account of your many years of service to the Yuntian Tower, and gave you many privileges. But now, you have committed many crimes, and the Yuntian Tower will definitely not tolerate such rebellious people. Jiang Hetian was guilty, but he did not give up. Rong Xiao had probably wanted to get rid of them for a long time. Today's words were high-sounding, but they were actually all excuses. He gritted his teeth. Since your Highness says that the evidence is conclusive, please show it to us. I, Jiang Hetian, have never done anything wrong to the Yuntian Tower. Just as he was about to refute, he saw Rong Xiao suddenly take out a letter. When he saw the familiar envelope, Jiang Hetian's heart skipped a beat, and his voice stopped abruptly. Rong Xiao picked up the letter and smiled faintly. Jiang Hetian, do you recognize this letter? Jiang Hetian looked away. I don't know. I've never seen this letter before. You haven't even opened it to look at the content. How do you know that you've never seen it before? Cold sweat broke out on Jiang Hetian's forehead with a swish sound. I just felt that this envelope was very unfamiliar. So I've never seen it before. Rong Xiao's lips curled up slightly. Rong Xiao did not speak quickly, and his voice was calm and casual, as if he was telling a story. However, every word he uttered was like a heavy hammer that pounded on Jiang Hetian's heart. He was utterly defeated. Jiang Hetian's heart was in a mess, and his whole mind was in a mess. He didn't know how things had developed to this point. This letter should be in Tan Taichen's hands. Moreover, after he read it, the handwriting on it should have long disappeared without a trace. How could it still be so intact? The most important thing was that this letter was taken out by Rong Xiao. What went wrong? Suddenly Jiang Hetian's heart sank. If this letter fell into Rong Xiao's hands, then Tan Taichen. If you don't admit it, I can also ask this person to come over and confront you face to face. As Rongxiu spoke, he raised his eyebrows and smiled faintly. However, I'm not sure if he's still alive to hold on until now. Every word was as light as the clouds and wind, but it was as sharp as a knife and as cold as ice. Jiang Hetian didn't doubt Rongxiu's words at all. If he said that the person was in his hands, then it must be. Otherwise, this letter wouldn't have fallen into his hands. I and the princess are husband and wife. Your intention to murder her is tantamount to treason. You father and daughter are in cahoots. You should have been executed long ago. What's there to explain? As Rongxiu spoke, he took back the letter. Immediately, he raised his other hand, and golden flames danced on his slender and fair fingertips. Half a quarter of an hour is up. Since you can't come to a conclusion, I will make the decision for you. Chi. The golden flames flew out. Soon after, it transformed into a huge cage, trapping Jiang Hetian within it. As the flames burned, his translucent body began to distort. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1477. Jiang Hetian let out a blood-curdling scream. Rongxiu had two divine bodies, and his strength was much higher than Jiang Hetian's. It was a piece of cake for him to deal with the half-crippled Jiang Hetian. Intense pain engulfed him. The burning of the soul was more painful than the destruction of the body. Jiang Hetian struggled frantically, trying to escape. But no matter how hard he tried, he could not break free from Rongxiu's control. In the end, he was at the mercy of Rongxiu. His soul gradually weakened and became transparent under the burning of the golden flames. His originally arrogant and unbridled face was now only filled with pain and despair. It hurts. It hurts too much. He had lived for so many years, but he had never suffered such terrible pain. Seeing his twisted face and body, and his gradually weakening breath, Jiang Jiwen was so angry that she spat out a few more mouthfuls of blood. She cried as she knelt in front of Rongxiu. Your Highness, please let father go. There must be some kind of misunderstanding here. For so many years, the Immortal Water Mausoleum has been loyal to you and Yuntian Tower. How could father do such a thing? There must be a mistake. She wailed and kept kowtowing. If Bailey June had not pulled her back in time, she would have fainted. Rongxiu raised his eyebrows. Are you questioning I? Jiang Jiwen's heart skipped a beat. No, that's not what I meant. The evidence is right here, and the witness is in I's hands. I was thinking that if Jiang Hetian did not come today, I would give him one last chance. Unfortunately, how could he blame others for his own death? If you have time, cry for yourself. Rongxiu said lightly. That one sentence completely pierced Jiang Jiwen's heart. The last trace of blood drained from her face, and her lips trembled violently. Gradually, her entire body began to tremble uncontrollably. She only thought that her father was going to die, but she forgot that she would be next. Her tears seemed to have dried up. Your Highness, you and I were childhood friends. Do you really not care about us at all? She knelt on the ground and looked at Rongxiu in despair. Her tears flowed down, leaving two streaks of tears on her messy, blood-stained face. She looked particularly pathetic. There had never been a moment when she clearly understood that Rongxiu really didn't have her in his heart, and he hated her to the core. In her blurred vision, that man's figure was so real, yet so illusory. He was tall and straight, handsome, like a demon and immortal. If he loved someone, he would do everything in the world just to please her, not afraid of wind and rain or dust. If he did not love a person, he would not even a glances. Cold-hearted and ruthless. She had adored and followed this man for many years, but in the end, she had become a joke. What affection? Love? Affection? He did not even hesitate to take her and her father's lives. Jiang Jiwen's heart felt like it was on fire. After the burning pain, it gradually withered and curled up. The blood in her body began to turn cold. When Rongxiu heard this, he seemed to have heard a ridiculous joke. He tilted his head, pondered for a moment, and asked in return, You have indeed stayed in the Divine Ruins world for many years, but I have not seen you more than 10 times. So can we be considered childhood friends? These simple words were like two tight slaps to Jiang Jiwen's face. She opened her mouth, but her eyes rolled back and she fainted. Yuan. Bailey Jun was extremely anxious. He had been cursing in his heart before, and the celestial physician he had notified had not come yet. But now, he could not care less about this. Rong Xiu wanted her life. Holy Sun, have you considered the consequences of doing this? Bailey Jun said anxiously. If the Mausoleum of Immortal Water finds out about Jiang Hetian's death, they will not let this go. You, Patriarch, you can rest assured about this. Rong Xiu interrupted him. The corners of his lips curled slightly, and there was a hint of nonchalance. Right now, the people of the Mausoleum of Immortal Water should be busy preparing for the ascension ceremony of the new patriarch. They have no time to care about this. However, I have already informed them. After this matter is over, they will send someone to bring the bones back. They are from the Jiang family after all. They will not just sit by and do nothing. However, Jiang Hetian's actions this time have let down the Jiang family's ancestors. He should not be buried in the ancestral grave. They would probably bring the bones back and find a random place to bury them. Bailey Chun was stunned when he heard that. Rong Xiu had been prepared for this. He had helped the other members of the Jiang family ascend the throne. In an instant, countless things were connected and finally formed a complete chain. Bailey Jun came to a realization. Rong Xiu clearly knew about Jiang Hetian's contact with outsiders and found a way to intercept the most recent letter. On the surface, he had been staying in the academy and ignoring everything. But in reality, he had been waiting to catch a turtle in a jar. However, Jiang Hetian did not notice this at all, and even ran over excitedly. In the end, not only did he fail to drag Shengguan Yu down with him, but he also landed himself in a hopeless situation. On the surface, the Jiang family seemed to be ruled by Jiang Hetian, but in reality, that was not the case. All these years, there had been people who were eager to take over the Jiang family. It was only because Jiang Hetian had been suppressing them that they did not dare to act rashly. Now these people were obviously looking for Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu had just openly punished Jiang Hetian, and now they could cause trouble in the Jiang family and directly take over the position of patriarch. For various reasons, these people were bound to be loyal to Rong Xiu. In this way, Rong Xiu could effortlessly make the Immortal Water Mausoleum his power. To him, Jiang Hetian was a malignant tumor who supported him in everything he did. But from today onwards, this problem no longer existed. Bailey Jun was shocked and stood rooted to the spot for a long time. Rong Xiu, what a ruthless method! What a deep plan! At this time, Jiang Hetian, who still had a little bit of strength left, also heard these words. This was the last straw that defeated him. His spirit was scattered, and he no longer had the will to fight. Soon, he was completely swallowed by the golden flames. He hated. In the end, he could only die with hatred and resentment. The sound of struggling finally dissipated. The golden flames engulfed everything. Jiang Hetian died just like that. There was dead silence. Everyone's expression was complicated, and they did not know what to say. Actually, they more or less knew about the conflict between the Yuntian Tower and the Immortal Water Mausoleum. Relying on the strength of the Immortal Water Mausoleum, Jiang Hetian had been tyrannical all these years. He was even somewhat famous in the Divine Ruins world. Sometimes, people would be more polite to him for the sake of the Yuntian Tower. They knew that with Rong Xiu's personality, he would not tolerate it forever. After all, Rong Xiu had personally led people to kill the family that wanted to rebel. But today's situation was still beyond their expectations. Jiang Hetian was dead. Next was Jiang Jiwan. Countless pairs of eyes fell on Jiang Jiwan, including Rong Xiu. Bailey Jun shielded Jiang Jiwan behind him and shouted, "Son of God, you can't kill her." Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1478. Many people exchanged glances in private. What was Bailey Jun thinking? Rong Xiu had already made it clear that he wanted to send both father and daughter to heaven. Now he was jumping out to stop him? Was it worth it to confront and even fall out with Rong Xiu over Jiang Jiwan? Jiang Hetian was already dead. What was there to save Jiang Jiwon? Family head, you saw everything that happened just now. Jiang Jiwon deserves death. Moreover, as the son of Yuntian Tower, I can't even kill a sinner? However, Rong Xiu seemed to have expected this. He wasn't shocked or angry as he questioned her with a calm expression. Bailey Jun's lips moved. Jiang Hetian was the one who committed the crime. He was also the one who wanted to kill Sheng Guanyu. Yuan had only fought with her twice in total. Sheng Guanyu was not injured at all. Yuan, on the other hand, was defeated and seriously injured. Her life is in danger. Anyway, Jiang Hetian is dead now. According to what you said, the Jiang family has a new head. Yuan's status as the eldest daughter of the Jiang family is no longer the same as before. Her Yuan meridian is broken, and she has lost her father. She is already in a desperate situation. Even so, you still won't let her go? Bailey Jun became angrier as he spoke. In the end, his tone was almost stern. Rong Xiu, on the other hand, remained calm. After Bailey Jun finished speaking, he smiled and said, "Is that all you wanted to say?" Bailey Jun choked and waved his sleeve. Rong Xiu nodded slightly. "Since you're done, I will also say a few words. Jiang Jiwon is well aware of everything that Jiang Hetian has done. She is not innocent. Otherwise, she wouldn't have taken the initiative to propose those 2 matches and used a killing move right from the start. She lost to you because her skills were not as good and she was too weak. How did it become an excuse for her? As for her status as the eldest daughter of the Jiang family, she should have known that this day would come when she wanted to kill you. Moreover, she seemed to have always regarded herself as the eldest daughter of the Yuntian Tower, right? As for her status as the eldest daughter of the Jiang family, she did not care for it. Even if she was not the eldest daughter of the Jiang family, she would not feel bad. She should be punished for her wrongdoings. You want me to pity her? Why don't you think about how much you would have to endure if she had to face the encirclement of so many of you? If he wanted him to let go of Jiang Ziyuan, who would let go of his you? Rong Xiu's tone was calm, but it had a hint of murderous intent. Chu Liyue's heart seemed to have been hit by something. Amidst the softness, a sweet scent spread. She tilted her head and looked at Rong Xiu. The contours of his face were smooth and perfect. His jade-like chin was slightly tense, and his deep eyes were filled with anger. He was angry for her. He felt injustice for her. Chu Liyue exhaled softly. In an instant, it seemed that all the anger and resentment had quietly dissipated. No matter what, this man would always stand by her side, shelter her from the wind and rain, and protect her. That was enough. She took a step forward, walked to Rong Xiu's side, and held his hand. When their fingertips touched, Rong Xiu immediately held her hand. Their fingers passed through the gaps of her fingers, and after a careful caress, they held each other tightly. His hand was dry and warm, and the warmth seemed to spread to the bottom of her heart in an instant. Chu Liyue's heart calmed down instantly. Bailey Jun was speechless. Looking at the intimate way their fingers were intertwined, he finally realized how important this woman was in Rong Xiu's heart. He loved this woman so much. It was to the point that she was even more important than himself. Not to mention Jiang Jiwon. Even if it were any other woman in the world, they would not be able to compete for the position of the princess consort. If it were in the past, Bailey Jun might have been able to use some coercive means to force Rong Xiu to submit. But now it was obviously impossible. Rong Xiu had killed Jiang Hetian in front of him on purpose. This was his warning. Bailey Jun was extremely sullen. After a few years of seclusion, the world had changed greatly. Rong Xiu had long been out of his control. Now, the only thing he could do was to protect Jiang Jiwon. Yuan has done something wrong. You can punish her, but you can't kill her. This old man will never agree to this. Bailey Jun's attitude was still firm. Chu Liyue narrowed his eyes, and a trace of doubt flashed through his mind. Bailey Jun was too concerned about Jiang Jiwon, wasn't he? He was even willing to turn against Rong Xiu for her. Rong Xiu's intention to kill Jiang Jiwon was already so clear, but he still acted like this. Even if Jiang Jiwon was raised by him, in front of this kind of thing, there seemed to be nothing to fight over, right? Unless he had a reason not to abandon Jiang Jiwon. As the noble patriarch of the Yuntian Tower, He had seen many storms and waves. What could make him like this? A vague guess appeared in his mind. Chu Luiyue frowned. Rong Xiu had already spoken. If you don't want me to kill her, you should at least give me a reason, right? Bailey Jun's face was ashen. There is no reason. No means no. This old man is the patriarch. Now, I don't even have the right to spare a person's life? This was a little overbearing and unreasonable. Rong Xiu was not in a hurry. Instead, his thin lips curled up slightly. He turned his head to look at Chu Luiyue and smiled warmly. Do you know that in the Yuntian Tower, there are only 2 ways for a person to escape death after committing a capital crime? Chu Luiyue showed a curious expression. Which 2? Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. The first way is that this person has once made a great contribution to the Yuntian Tower, so the merit can make up for the crime. The other way, he paused. This person has the direct bloodline of the Yuntian Tower, so he can be spared from death. Digression. The article continues at 6 o'clock. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1479. Rong Xiu looked at Bailey Jun and smiled casually. Patriarch, even if you have a high status, the rules of the Yuntian Tower were set by our ancestors. You can't just go against them. What do you think? As long as Jiang Jiwen fulfills one of these 2 conditions, I can spare her from death. Everyone's expression became strange. Of course, Rong Xiu's sudden words were not without reason. How old was Jiang Jiwen now? At most, she was a spoiled young lady. She might have had some talent, but of course, it was gone now. Such a person did not look like someone who had made great contributions to the Yuntian Tower, right? Then, there was only the second possibility. Although the Immortal Water Tomb was one of the 28 divisions of the Yuntian Tower, they were not related by blood. Jiang Jiwen was the young lady of the Jiang family. How could she have the direct bloodline of the Yuntian Tower? Bailey Jun was shocked and angry. He stared at Rong Xiu, trying to find some clues from his face. Did he already know something? That shouldn't be. Those things had been covered in dust for many years. Those who knew about it were no longer alive. How could Rong Xiu? But Bailey Jun was not sure. Based on Rong Xiu's character, he definitely wouldn't say something like that unless he had concrete evidence. But how could he admit it? Bailey Jun's chest felt like it was blocked by something. He could not breathe. If that's the case, doesn't that mean young lady Jiang doesn't fit the bill? Chu Luiyue said softly. He looked regretfully at the unconscious Jiang Jiwen. I heard that young lady Jiang was only 22 or 23 years old. She used to be a genius. It's a pity that she fell like this. Bailey Jun was so angry that his face turned red. What a hypocrite. These people probably couldn't wait for Jiang Jiwen to die quickly. Previously, he had used all sorts of methods to coerce her. But now, he was acting so hypocritical. It was truly disgusting. Rong Xiu looked indifferent. Her biological mother passed away when she was young. Now that Jiang Hetian is also dead, she is the only one left. Coupled with the fact that her Yuan meridian is broken, her reputation is in tatters. In this situation, death was probably the only way for Jiang Jiwen to escape. However, these words were like a thorn that pierced into Bailey Chun's heart. Rong Xiu said, Clan leader, I know that you have loved Jiang Jiwen very much for many years. Why don't you leave us for a while? As he spoke, he suddenly took a step forward. This step was like stepping on Bailey Jun's sore spot. The last string in his mind suddenly snapped. Yuan is this old man's granddaughter. Who dares to touch her? As soon as he finished speaking, there was dead silence. Although many people had already guessed this, hearing Bailey Jun admit it with their own ears was still very shocking. Everyone knew that the clan leader of the Yuntian Tower, Bailey Jun, was obsessed with cultivation his entire life. He was unmarried and had no children. Back then, the various factions of the Yuntian Tower fought fiercely. He relied on this to defeat the others and become the clan leader. At that time, he said that he had no wife and children. If he became the clan leader, he would be fairer. But now he suddenly said that Jiang Jiwen was his granddaughter. It was like a clap of thunder. Rong Xiu stopped in his tracks. His thin lips curled into an extremely faint smile. Oh, you have never married in your entire life. How did you have a granddaughter out of nowhere? Clan leader, even if you can't bear to part with Jiang Jiwan, you don't have to pour dirty water on yourself just to save her, right? Once you lose this reputation, you can never get it back. Bailey Jun's temples throbbed when he heard this. His blood surged wildly, almost bursting. Rong Xiu's words were simply murderous. He took a deep breath and managed to restrain his emotions with great difficulty. He said coldly and sternly, "What this old man said just now is true. Jiang Hetian's first wife, Yuan Yuan's birth mother, is this old man's only daughter." Bailey Jun said every word with great difficulty. He knew that today's action was tantamount to tearing off his face and letting others trample on him. But he had no other choice. If he wanted to save Jiang Jiwan, this was the only way. "Grandpa Chun, what did you say?" At this moment Jiang Jiwan, who had been unconscious for a long time, slowly woke up. In a daze she heard Bailey Jun's words. She was completely stunned. Bailey Jun turned around and carefully helped her up. Yuan, don't be afraid. You're Grandpa's only granddaughter. Grandpa won't let you suffer." Grandpa. Jiang Jiwan really didn't know about this. After realizing the meaning of this sentence, she slowly widened her eyes and didn't come back to her senses for a long time. "You're the direct descendant of the Yuntian Tower. No one can kill you." Bailey Jun comforted her. In fact, this was a long story. Back then, he went out to train for a period of time and met a woman. The two of them secretly pledged to spend their lives together and naturally talked about marriage. After the training ended, he planned to go back to the Yuntian Tower first and then take the woman back. But at that time, the Yuntian Tower was in chaos, so he didn't have time to take care of it. In addition, he was not married and had no children, so he became the strongest candidate for the position of clan leader. He thought about it and didn't mention this matter to anyone else. It was about a year later when the Yuntian Tower stabilized. He quietly went back and found that the woman had already given birth to a daughter for him. After seeing him again, the woman seemed to be resentful and committed suicide. All that was left was a lonely little girl who was still in swaddling clothes. Of course, he couldn't bring his daughter back to the Yuntian Tower. So he passed through several places and sent her to a family. For several years he secretly took care of her. Because he knew that she was his only child, he doted on this daughter very much. Later, he even tried to arrange for her to marry into the Jiang family. Then, she gave birth to Jiang Jiwan. Unfortunately, she suffered a lot of bleeding during the birth and died a few years later. How could Bailey Jun not feel sorry for his granddaughter? So at that time, he finally decided to take Jiang Jiwan to the Yuntian Tower and let her grow up by his side, regardless of the various private criticisms. Her food and clothing were all according to the standards of a young lady of the Yuntian Tower. At first, everyone felt that it was very inappropriate, but seeing that his attitude was firm, they didn't say anything. They just thought that he didn't have a child and was deeply lonely. Perhaps he was so persistent because he was fated to be with Jiang Jiwan. As time passed, everyone got used to it and didn't say much. When Jiang Jiwan heard this, she was a little confused for a moment. However, she quickly grasped the main point. She was Bailey Jun's biological granddaughter. She was the real young lady of the Yuntian Tower. She didn't have to die. Moreover, she could live well in the future. Her identity was even more noble than before, wasn't it? Jiang Jiwan was so emotional that tears flowed down her cheeks as she clutched Bailey Jun's sleeve tightly. "Grandpa, I see." Rong Xiu stood at the side and smiled. "In that case, let's begin the test. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network." Chapter 1480. Jiang Jiwan's tears suddenly stopped. She looked at Rong Xiu in astonishment. "Test? What test?" Bailey Chun also furrowed his brows, seemingly very displeased. "Holy Sun, are you still doubting Yuan's identity?" He had just admitted with his own mouth that Jiang Yuan was his biological granddaughter. Saying this in front of so many people had already made him lose all his face. If it was not true, why did he have to do this? Rongxiu smiled. Patriarch, don't misunderstand. I was just following the rules. After all, this matter concerns the legitimate bloodline of the Yuntian Tower. Naturally, I have to be careful. After all, only by confirming her bloodline can we let her acknowledge her ancestors openly. Isn't that right? Jiang Jiwan had to face not only his interrogation, but also the entire Yuntian Tower. Of course, a few words would not be enough to convince them. Bailey Jun's anger lessened a little. After pondering for a while, he finally nodded. Yuan is seriously injured and her body is weak now. Be careful. Rongxiu raised his eyebrows. It's just a blood test. It's very simple. You don't have to worry. Bailey Jun did not reply. Instead, he looked at Jiang Jiwan and gently patted her hand. Yuan, bear with it for a while. We'll go back later. In the past, he could only bury this matter deep in his heart to save face. But now, in order to protect Jiang Jiwan, he had to do this. No matter what others would say, he did not care anymore. Jiang Jiwan was touched. She would never have thought that she was hiding such a secret on her body. The legitimate daughter of the Yuntian Tower. Even if she couldn't take the position of princess consort, with this identity, she wouldn't be bullied in the future. Grandfather, you're so good to me. Bailey Chun was satisfied when he heard that and smiled. Your grandpa's only relative. Who else should I treat well? Chu Luo watched from the side with a slight smile. This pair of grandfather and grandson recognized each other really quickly. Especially Jiang Jiwan. Her mental fortitude was really good. She had just witnessed her father's tragic death, and now she was affectionately calling Bailey Jun grandfather. It seemed that she was really happy. That was why she could smile so brightly from a short distance away, before her father's body was completely cold. However, when he thought about it carefully, it made sense. In a hopeless situation, there was always a silver lining. Anyone would be overjoyed, right? Patriarch, please step aside. Rongxiu said. Bailey Jun took a few steps back. Jiang Jiwan plucked up her courage and looked up at Rongxiu. However, there was no longer any fear and cowardice in his eyes. So what if she was no longer the eldest young lady of the Jiang family? From now on, she was the direct descendant of the Yuntian Tower. Jiang Jiwan instantly felt much more confident, and the pain in her body seemed to have lessened a lot. Your Highness. Rongxiu closed his eyes and raised one hand. A golden stream of light flew out from his palm and quickly condensed in mid-air. Then, a palm-sized grayish-white round stone dial appeared in front of him. The golden flames burned on top of it and finally converged in the middle to form an incomparably exquisite pointer. Chu Luo watched from the side and was a little surprised. This small stone dial looked very similar to the infinite divine dial that she saw that day. There were also 12 numbers and a pointer on it. Was this something to test the bloodline of the Yuntian Tower? As if sensing her gaze, Rongxiu slowly opened his eyes and looked at her with a smile. He patiently explained, "This is the infinite divine dial's child dial. It's used to test the purity of the bloodline of the Yuntian Tower. The higher the number, the purer the bloodline. The purer the bloodline, the higher the status in the clan." Chu Luo nodded. It was indeed related to the infinite divine dial. It was just that the infinite divine dial could test the bloodline power of everyone. But this child dial was used to test the bloodline of the Yuntian Tower. Rongxiu pushed his palm forward, and the child dial slowly flew forward and finally stopped in front of Jiang Jiwan. Just put your hand on it. This thing did not require the use of force. As long as one touched it with blood, the result would be quickly obtained. Jiang Jiwan's hand was covered in messy bloodstains. She could just put her hand on it directly, which saved her a lot of trouble. Jiang Jiwan stared at the child dial. For a moment she was nervous and excited. She had seen this child dial before, but she had never thought that she would have a day like this. She held her breath and carefully placed her hand on it. Buzz! The moment she touched it, the child dial let out a buzzing sound. Jiang Jiwan's heart felt as if it was being squeezed tightly by something. She stared at it without blinking. The descendants of the Yuntian Tower's bloodline usually had a score of 6 or 7. Those who were slightly more outstanding could reach 8. If they could reach 9, their status and treatment in the clan would be extraordinary. She did not know how many points she could reach. Bailey June was also watching. Although the talent of the woman who was with him back then was average, his bloodline power was rich, so it should not affect him much. Moreover, judging from Jiang Jiwon's outstanding talent in the past, she should be able to reach 8 at the very least. However, as time passed slowly, the golden needle on the child dial did not move. Jiang Jiwon was a little confused. She looked at Bailey June and felt a little uneasy. Bailey June said, Yuan, try using your other hand. Jiang Jiwon did as she was told. However, this time, the needle on the child dial stayed at its initial position. How could this be? Bailey June raised his foot and was about to step forward. There's something wrong with the child dial. Jiang Jiwon gritted her teeth and placed both hands on the child dial. She did not believe that she could not trigger the child dial. Bang! When Jiang Jiwon's hands were about to reach out, the child dial suddenly retreated. The golden needle shattered into pieces with a bang. A stream of light flashed, and the child dial flew back to Rong Xiao. Rong Xiao glanced at her from the side and seemed to be smiling. The child dial's needle broke on its own, which means that it has touched the bloodline of another clan. Clan leader Jiang Jiwon doesn't seem to be of the Yuntian Tower bloodline. Are you mistaken? Who knows where this Jiang Jiwon came from? Bailey June's expression changed drastically. Digression. Tomorrow at 12 o'clock, mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1481. Impossible. There must be something wrong with this. Due to his agitation, Bailey June's voice became a little sharp and ear-piercing. His old face was filled with shock and anger. Test again. Rong Xiao smiled, but his eyes were cold and resolute. Patriarch, you know that Zigui won't make a mistake, so why do you have to do this? Jiang Jiwon does not have the slightest bit of Yuntian Tower's bloodline. Every word was like a sharp knife, ruthlessly stabbing into Bailey June's heart. His footsteps faltered, his vision turned black, and his body turned cold. How could this be? How is this possible? When Jiang Jiwon was born, he had sent someone to guard her, so there was no mistake about her identity. Then there must be something wrong with my daughter. I was the one who carried that child back then, and I calculated the time at that time, so it should be my child. Could it be? A terrifying and absurd conjecture appeared in Bailey June's mind, causing his heart to beat violently and his blood to boil, almost bursting. He panted heavily, pressing his chest with one hand, and his mind was in a mess. The surroundings were silent. Many people came back to their senses and secretly exchanged glances, their expressions strange and forbearing. What a huge cuckold! What an exciting show! The biological granddaughter Jiang Jiwon, whom Bailey June had been taking care of, had nothing to do with him. For so many years, I raised someone else's child, but I didn't even know it. What a joke! They thought that the most shocking news of the day was that he revealed that Jiang Jiwon was his granddaughter, but they never expected such a huge reversal. And in front of so many people. It's a slap in the face. How exciting! From now on, Bailey June will probably become the laughingstock of the entire Divine Ruins. No one said anything, but their gazes fell on Bailey June. The meaning was unclear, complicated and chaotic. The sarcasm and ridicule were blatant. The air seemed to have frozen. Bailey June felt as if there was an invisible force pressing down on him, almost sealing him in this sealed space. His face was burning, but his entire body was cold to the bone. Jiang Jiwon was also stunned by Rong Xiao's words. She was not a direct descendant of the Yuntian Tower? But didn't the clan leader just say that she was his biological granddaughter? What was going on? Sensing that something was wrong, Jiang Jiwon felt a strong sense of uneasiness. She opened her mouth and looked at Bailey June for help. Grandfather. These two words instantly triggered Bailey June's sensitive nerves. Don't call me. Bailey June abruptly turned around and bellowed. Jiang Jiwon was shocked. Her body trembled, and tears fell unconsciously. Clan leader, I. In her memory, The clan leader had never spoken to her with such a terrifying expression and tone. But what did she do wrong? He was the one who said that he was her grandfather. He was the one who said that he wanted to protect her and not let her be wronged. But now, in the blink of an eye, everything had changed. She didn't want this test result to happen. In the end, why was she the one to be blamed for everything? In just a few short breaths, Jiang Juwan fell from heaven to hell, the kind that was ruthlessly stepped on. No matter how muddle-headed she was, she knew what was waiting for her. Her face was pale, and her cracked lips trembled violently. Clan leader, since this is a misunderstanding, then, you don't have any objections to the execution of Jiang Juwan, right? Rongxiu asked very politely. Some people couldn't help but look away and laugh secretly. Rongxiu did it on purpose. In front of so many people, he confirmed that Jiang Jiwan wasn't Bailey Jun's granddaughter. It was already embarrassing enough. If he asked again, wouldn't he be reminding Bailey Jun that he was a cuckold? Bailey Jun's lungs were about to explode from anger. In his life, he had never lost so much face and was so embarrassed. He flung his sleeve and turned to leave. This place he couldn't stay any longer. Clan leader. Jiang Jiwan saw that he was about to leave and panicked. If he left just like that, what would happen to her? Clan leader. There's something wrong with this Zigu. There must be something wrong. How could she not be the descendant of the Yuntian Tower? She must be. She must be. Bailey Jun's head hurt. He turned around and scolded. Shut up. The Zigu was left behind by the ancestors of the Yuntian Tower. After a long time, it had never been wrong. Just now, he was so shocked that he lost his composure and blurted out those doubtful words. However, he knew in his heart that the Zigu was perfectly fine. Not to mention Rongxiu. Even he didn't have the ability to tamper with the Zigu. Jiang Juwan must be crazy to say that. Jiang Jiwan was so frightened that her whole body trembled. However, she only hesitated for a moment before crying even harder. She looked at Bailey Jun with teary eyes. Grandpa Chun, no matter what, I grew up by your side. Don't you have any feelings for Yuan Yuan at all? Even if Yuan Yuan isn't your biological granddaughter, Yuan Yuan has always treated you as her biological grandfather all these years. It would have been better if she didn't mention this. The moment she did, the hatred and anger in Bailey Jun's heart surged wildly. Treat her well. Raise her by his side since she was young? Wasn't it all because he thought that she was his biological granddaughter? However, now that the truth had surfaced, he realized that he had been deceived his entire life. He had been fooled his entire life. He had also become a complete joke. There were so many outstanding disciples in Yuntian Tower, and many of them were more outstanding than her. Why did he dote on her so much? Wasn't it all because, what years of affection? All these years, how well he had treated Jiang Jiwan, how deeply he cared for her, was how painful it was now, how embarrassing it was. Seeing that Bailey Jun's expression was not right, Jiang Jiwan was a little afraid. However, she was more afraid of death. Therefore, she hesitated for a moment and reached out to Bailey Jun. Grandpa Chun, please help Yuan Yuan. At this moment, she was seriously injured and didn't even have the strength to stand up on her own. Bailey Jun was a few steps away from her. Even if she stretched out her hand, she wouldn't be able to reach Bailey Jun. However, this action was extremely disgusting in Bailey Jun's eyes. His eyelids twitched violently, and he waved his hand almost reflexively. Get lost. What kind of wild thing was this? She had deceived him for so many years, and now she had the audacity to ask for help. Bang! This time, he was wrapped in anger and full of strength. In an instant, Jiang Jiwan was sent flying and fell heavily to the ground. Pfft! Jiang Jiwan spat out a mouthful of blood, and her breathing was weak. She tried to straighten up with difficulty, but she couldn't get up no matter how hard she tried. She could only lie on the ground in a sorry state like an ant. She stared at Bailey Jun, and layers of despair surged in her eyes. Finally, the corner of her mouth slowly pulled into an extremely sarcastic smile. But it was also bleak and self-deprecating. Her cry was nothing more than a joke. The next moment, before her smile could fully relax, her head tilted, and she kowtowed to the ground. There was no sound. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1482. Jiang Jiwon had been injured ever since she left the wilderness. Although she had been recuperating in the Yuntian Tower, she had yet to fully recover. This time, in order to compete with Chu Luiyue, she had even consumed a bewildering fragrance pill without thinking about the consequences. This had caused her Yuan meridian to rupture and severely damaged her body. She was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Bailey June's final attack had become the straw that broke the camel's back. Bailey June had not intended to kill her, but his attack was too strong. Jiang Jiwon could not withstand it. The crowd quieted down. They were all speechless as they watched the scene unfold. Jiang Jiwon was lying on the ground. Her body was stained with blood. Her head was tilted upwards at a strange angle. She could no longer move her body. This was the only way she could see Bailey June. Her eyes were bulging. Her gaze was unfocused. Her face was covered in blood and wounds. One could even see the bulging veins on her forehead and neck. Even though she was dead, one could still see how desperate and hysterical she had been before she died. However, at that time, she no longer had any strength to resist or struggle. She died with her eyes wide open. After a brief moment of silence, low voices of discussion quietly spread. TSK, he really is ruthless. He took Jiang Jiwon's life just like that. After all, he had brought her by his side for several years and raised her personally. He really doesn't show any mercy. I don't know where this bastard came from. Why should he show mercy? I think Bailey Chun clearly did it on purpose this time. That's true. If I were him, I would be too ashamed to show my face in the future. It's embarrassing enough to have an illegitimate daughter. In the end, she's not even his. This joke is enough to make me laugh for a year. Haha. Shuh. Lower your voice. Bailey June heard it. Didn't you see his expression change? So what? He did this. So why can't others talk about it? Do you think he can come over and seal our mouths? Moreover, this matter would spread throughout the entire Divine Ruins world in a few days. There are so many people and so many mouths. Can he stop them all? Most of the people present had extraordinary statuses. Although they were polite to Bailey June, it did not mean that they were afraid of him. Especially now that the power of the Yuntian Tower was in the hands of Rong Xiu. Bailey June had nothing to do with it. It had been so long, and he couldn't even get a celestial physician to come over. This was already very telling. Coupled with Jiang Jiwon's blood test, Bailey June's reputation was completely lost. Bailey June clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. The veins on his forehead bulged, and his wrinkled face trembled slightly. It was obvious that he was on the verge of exploding. He glanced at Jiang Jiwon, then turned around and left without hesitation. If he looked at Jiang Jiwon's face again, he would only think of those humiliating things. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows when he saw this. Patriarch, are you leaving? Bailey June stopped in his tracks. I still have important matters to attend to in the clan, so I'll take my leave. His voice was hoarse, as if he was suppressing something. Rong Xiu raised his chin. Then Jiang Jiwon's body. Just deal with it with her father. Bailey June's tone suddenly became impatient, and his footsteps quickened as he left quickly. It seemed that mentioning Jiang Jiwon's name would dirty his mouth. Rong Xiu remained calm and nodded with a smile. Okay. Have a safe trip. Bailey June did not even know how to speak. In a flash, he disappeared on the spot. Bailey June was gone, and the Jiang family father and daughter were dead. However, to everyone, today's incident was something that they would remember for a long time. Yuntian Tower's patriarch, Bailey June, did not hesitate to confront Rong Xiu for Jiang Jiwon, and even publicly admitted that he had an illegitimate daughter back then. For someone from a first-rate family like him, this was a stain that would stay with them for the rest of their lives. Bailey June went all out just to keep his only descendant. However, after all this, he realized that she was not his descendant at all. Wasn't this too laughable? After going into seclusion for a few years, he finally came out. But before he could show off, he had already lost all his face. Rong Xiu turned around and looked at the people from Lingxiao College. Sorry for dirtying the school grounds. Elder Bo Yin smiled and said to the people behind him, "Don't worry. You guys go and take care of this." Two elders stepped forward and quickly carried Jiang Jiwan and Jiang Hetian's bodies to the side and quickly cleaned up the dirty ground. Rong Xiu looked at the sky. "I have already informed the Jiang family. They should be here in a while." Everyone was speechless. The Jiang family was very far away from here. How could they arrive in such a short time? Unless Rong Xiu had given this order long ago. He was clearly prepared to take the lives of the father and daughter before today. Originally, everyone was here for Chu Yu. Who would have thought that Rong Xiu would be the one to clean up the family? This man was still very young, but his thoughts were deep and unpredictable. It was as if everything was under his control. A few years ago, when he took the position of the son of Saint, his fierce reputation was well known, and everyone was quite wary of him. However, until today they realized that they had underestimated Rong Xiu. His mind means talent and strength. He was the best in almost everything. Such a person really couldn't be underestimated. Chu Luyue turned around, took a deep breath, and then bowed to Elder Bo Yin and the others. Elder Huafeng hurriedly said, "Hey little girl, what are you doing?" Chu Luyue smiled apologetically. "I used a fake identity to enter the academy and deceived the elders and students. I'm really sorry." Elder Huafeng rubbed his hands. "Aya, what's wrong with that? Actually, in the academy, not everyone had used their real identities. You didn't do anything wrong, so why apologize? There were too many people who wanted to come to Lingxiao College to study. There were all kinds of people with different identities. There were many people who changed their names and identities. It was just that Chu Luyue's matter this time was a little bigger. To Yan Go, it wasn't a big mistake." Elder Bo Yin stroked his beard and nodded. "That's right. As long as you didn't do anything against the academy's principles, the academy wouldn't pursue this matter. Moreover, you have made several great contributions to the academy during this period of time. There were countless big and small disasters, but of course this couldn't be mentioned now. Whether you are Chu Yu or Shangguan Yu, you are still a student of the academy. The academy will naturally protect you." As he spoke, Elder Bo Yin looked around. The hint was very obvious. They Lingxiao College didn't care about being deceived by Chu Luyue. How could others have the right to say anything? Chu Luyue heaved a sigh of relief and felt grateful at the same time. However, at this moment a somewhat abrupt voice suddenly sounded. "The matter of the Black Demon Cave has been clarified. Concealing your identity, we can also forget about it. However, there is one thing that Shangguan Yu hasn't made clear. Is the Heavenly Square Cauldron on you? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network." You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.